Chapter 224. Martial God Realm. It's time to leave. Qin Yu stood up, clenched his fists, and revealed a smile. After entering the martial God Realm, the true essence in his body was as vast as the sea, unfathomable. The 5 great mysteries of heaven and earth that he comprehended were also mysterious and unfathomable, and his strength had soared by several levels. Qin Yu's main purpose in coming to the 100 Martial Realm was to find the dragon blood. Since the dragon soul did not sense the existence of the dragon race in the 100 Martial Realm, naturally, there was no need for Qin Yu to continue staying in the 100 Martial Realm. Suddenly, Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. 2 auras appeared outside the palace. One was Jin Ling Xiao, and the other's aura was very unfamiliar, and the pressure far surpassed Jin Ling Xiao. Could it be the palace master of the 100 Beast Palace? With a flash of thought, Qin Yu dispersed the palace's barrier and opened the door. Jin Ling Xiao and the blue-robed woman appeared in front of Qin Yu's eyes. Elder Qin, this is our palace master of the 100 Beast Palace. Jin Ling Xiao introduced to Qin Yu. Celestial Qilin race? Qin Yu sized up the blue-robed woman, slightly surprised. He did not expect that the palace master of the 100 Beast Palace was actually a half-monster. Of course, the monster race bloodline in the blue-robed woman's body was not simple. The Celestial Qilin race was a divine beast, the descendants of the Celestial Qilin, and their talent was extraordinary. Looking at the blue-robed woman's situation, it seemed that she was in the bloodline transformation period. What a strong dragon chi fluctuation! Su Xiaoya looked at Qin Yu, and a strange light flickered in her eyes. Although she heard that Qin Yu had dragon blood in his body, she still did not expect that Qin Yu's dragon blood would be so strong. Elder Qin, we came here to know if the matter of Luogue City has anything to do with you. After entering the palace, Jin Ling Xiao did not talk nonsense and went straight to the point. You were found out so quickly. The dragon soul was somewhat glad that Qin Yu immediately went into seclusion to break through after returning. Now that his cultivation had advanced to the martial god realm, even if the matter was exposed, Qin Yu would not be so passive. That's right, Qin Yu did not deny it. Since Jin Ling Xiao and Su Xiaoya had come in person, they must have confirmed this matter. Since Qin Yu was about to leave, he might as well take the opportunity to leave. It's really you? Jin Ling Xiao's expression was solemn. At first, he didn't believe it. After all, Qin Yu had just arrived at the 100 Martial Realm, and it was unlikely that he would provoke the 10,000 Ghost Palace. I heard that you can refine more than 10-9 Revolutions blood spirit pills. Qin Yu was about to speak when Su Xiaoya suddenly spoke. Yes. Qin Yu nodded slightly. There were a total of 47 martial progenitors. Su Xiaoya was the strongest among them, with a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivation. Jin Ling Xiao was the only 4th-layer martial progenitor. There were 6 3rd-layer martial progenitors, 19 2nd-layer martial progenitors, and the rest were 1st-layer martial progenitors. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace arrived with a formidable aura. The one leading them was none other than Gu Tianlang. Behind Gu Tianlang, there were 9 6th-layer martial progenitors and 14 5th-layer martial progenitors. Gu Tianlang's strength alone was enough to deal with the people of the 100 Beast Palace. Not to mention, there were over 100 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The difference between a top-tier faction and a mid-tier faction was clearly displayed at this moment. Not far away from the 10,000 Ghost Palace, there were 30 figures in the martial progenitor realm. They were from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquee Palace that had received the news. 10,000 Ghost Palace. What's going on? Why would the 10,000 Ghost Palace send so many martial progenitor realm experts here? Look, it's the people of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquee Palace. Could it be that the 10,000 Ghost Palace is here to avenge them? I thought the top-tier factions would never interfere with the conflicts of other factions. The martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace were startled as a terrifying aura spread among the crowd. Such strength was already sufficient to completely annihilate their 100-beast palace. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Su Xiaoya flung her sleeve, causing the sky above the 100-beast palace to be filled with obscure runes. At that instant, the 100-beast palace that covered an area of over 10,000 li was encapsulated by a giant formation. Miss Xiaoya, it's been a while. The people of the 10,000 Ghost Palace stopped outside the barrier. The skinny Gu Tianlang stepped forward and glanced at Su Xiaoya with flickering eyes. Judging from his tone, it seemed like he was quite familiar with Su Xiaoya. Bringing so many people here, are you planning to harm the 100-beast palace? Su Xiaoya stared at Gu Tianlang coldly with a hint of murderous intent, as if she was holding a grudge against him. Why would I? I'm here for that kid. He's the culprit that destroyed the main city of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. A smile appeared on Gu Tianlang's face, which was even more terrifying. Elder Qin, the martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace glanced at Gu Tianlang after hearing his words. Destroyed the main city of the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Could it be that Elder Qin was responsible for the destruction of the Luogue city? The martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace were aware of the reason, but they could not believe it. They knew that Qin Yu was strong, but he would not dare to provoke a top-tier faction, right? Chapter 225. I see. I was wondering why the 10,000 Ghost Palace would send such a force. That kid is so reckless. He dares to offend the 10,000 Ghost Palace. I wonder if the 100-beast palace will hand him over. He's just a sacred level formation master. I don't think the 100-beast palace will offend a top faction for him. The Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents began to discuss after learning about the situation. So this is why you sealed the 10,000 Ghost Palace. Su Xiaoya's eyes turned colder. She knew Gu Tianlong's ambition. Qin Yu was just an excuse. Gu Tianlong's real target was her. He's a sacred level formation master. I had no choice. Looking at Su Xiaoya's voluptuous figure, Gu Tianlong's eyes were burning with passion. Retreat 1,000 miles and disperse the spatial seal. The 100-beast palace will not interfere in the matters between the two of you. Su Xiaoya said coldly. That won't do. Gu Tianlang rejected right away. Since he had come here with such great fanfare, he wouldn't let go of either Qin Yu or Su Xiaoya. It would be hard to find such an excuse in the future. It seemed like we have to work together. Su Xiaoya turned around and flicked her finger. An ancient token flew towards Qin Yu. It was the badge that controlled the formation. Qin Yu's cultivation wasn't strong, but a sacred level formation master would be able to unleash a shocking battle strength under such circumstances. Palace Master, Jin Ling Xiao, and the other martial progenitors were shocked. Su Xiaoya was obviously going to go against the 10,000 Ghost Palace. But facing the 10,000 Ghost Palace's battle strength, wasn't it courting death? I have a grudge with the 10,000 Ghost Palace. If you're afraid, you can leave with your clans. Su Xiaoya was unmoved. Her voice was cold. Jin Ling Xiao and the other martial progenitors were surprised. It was their first time hearing about this. Leave with their clans? They looked at the Sky Crane Valley and the other two sects behind the 10,000 Ghost Palace. All of them immediately erased the thought. Without Su Xiaoya, the 100-beast palace's battle strength was far weaker than the two sections. Once they left the palace, even if the 10,000 Ghost Palace did not pursue them, Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents would not let go of this opportunity. There is indeed a grudge between them. Qin Yu caught the array token and was not surprised. When he noticed Su Xiaoya's killing intent earlier, he had already guessed it. Qin Yu did not reject Su Xiaoya's suggestion to join forces. Now that the void was sealed, it was impossible to teleport away. Joining hands with the 100-beast palace was the best choice. Do you recognize what formation this is? Su Xiaoya said as she looked at Qin Yu. She was testing Qin Yu's array Dao level. If Qin Yu's level was not as amazing as Jin Ling Xiao had described, then he would be able to defeat Jin Ling Xiao. If that was the case, then it would be better for the formation token to be in her hands. The ancient beast god formation. Unfortunately, it's just an incomplete formation. Spirit tattoos filled Qin Yu's left palm. The formation token instantly trembled slightly, and the heaven-shrouding formation that enveloped the 100-beast palace flickered with runes. A terrifying, murderous aura filled the air. The ancient beast god formation was a true divine-grade array. Only a divine-grade array master could set it up. And the ancient beast god formation of the 100-beast palace was obviously just an incomplete formation. It was probably only 1/3 of the power of the true ancient beast god formation. Even so, it was far more powerful than an ordinary pinnacle saint array. After all, it was the sect protection formation of the 100-beast palace, so it was naturally powerful. I'll leave it to you. Su Xiao nodded slightly and looked coldly at the 1,000-ghost palace. There would definitely be a great battle today, and even she did not know whether she would survive. However, the 1,000-ghost palace had to pay the price in blood if they wanted to break through the 100-beast palace. Miss Xiaoye, the 100-year promise left by your master is about to come. It's impossible for you to completely awaken the heavenly Qilin bloodline. Why are you still resisting? Gu Tianlang said with a creepy smile on his face. He did not care that Su Xiaoye had given the ancient beast god formation token to Qinyu. In front of absolute power, all means were useless. 100-year promise? Heavenly Qilin bloodline? Could she be? Inside the 1,000-ghost palace, Missouri Li Huang came to a realization after hearing the conversation. No wonder Gu Tianlang had gathered almost half of the martial progenitors of the 1,000-ghost palace. It turned out that apart from the ancient immortal badge in Qin Yu's possession, there was another reason. If you still remember the 100-year promise my master made, have you thought about the consequences of offending us today? Su Xiaoye seemed to be provoked. Her eyes turned colder as her murderous intent grew stronger. I'm here to capture the criminals of the 1,000-ghost palace. I'm not here to go against my master's promise. However, if you're willing to help, don't blame me for showing no mercy. Gu Tianlang gave the order without wasting any time. Over 100 martial progenitors of the 1,000-ghost palace charged forward with ferocious auras. Bang, bang, bang. However, as the martial progenitors of the 1,000-ghost palace were about to make their moves, a series of deep explosions could be heard. Look, the ancient beast god formation is changing. The crowd took a closer look. They discovered that the runes on the ancient beast god formation were flashing across like meteors, like a starry night sky. It was quite pleasing to the eye. However, hidden beneath that beautiful scenery was a killing intent that caused one's heart to palpitate. Qinyu. Su Xiaoye immediately reacted and turned her head around. Qinyu had already flown to the center of the ancient beast god formation after receiving the badge. Lines of ancient and profound formation runes gushed out of his palm and merged with the beast god ancient formation in an instant. That kid! Attack! Gu Tianlang's eyelids jumped as he immediately gave the order to attack. He realized that he had underestimated Qinyu. At that instant, the power of the ancient beast god formation was multiplied. His capabilities were utterly shocking. Bang, bang, bang. Wisps of ferocious rules of the heavens and earth swept across the place. The ancient beast god formation that was enduring the attacks of over 100 martial progenitors began to shake vigorously. The martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace could feel their hearts rising to their throats. They knew that once the ancient beast god formation was broken, they would be facing the attacks of over 100 martial progenitor realm experts. Turn! A deep roar could be heard all of a sudden. Qin Yu's hand slapped onto the beast god's ancient formation array. His left hand was covered in runes while the badge in his right hand glowed. The ancient beast god formation immediately emitted a mystical glow. On top of the formation, huge spiritual inscriptions appeared, forming a huge 9 palaces formation diagram. The 9 palaces formation seemed to contain some kind of mysterious power. It was able to contain the rules of the heavens and earth. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following this, a misty gray mist sprang into the sky and covered the entire place. The martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghosts Hall, Sky Crane Valley, and Snow Marquee Palace were surrounded by the mist. 9 palaces formation? What kind of formation is that? Gu Tianlang was shocked. He was a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm expert. Thus, he was quite knowledgeable. However, he could not recognize the formation that Qin Yu was executing. More importantly, there was a 9 palaces formation diagram within the mist. Vaguely, the entire sky was divided into 9 huge regions. 9 palaces formation. Su Xiaoya's eyes flickered as she recognized the formation. The 9 palaces formation was formed by the 9 palaces of Qian, Can, Jin, Zhen, Zhong, Sun, Li Ku, and Dui. It was said that the 9 palaces could split the heavens and earth. However, this ancient killing formation had long been lost in the ancient times. Qin Yu had managed to construct such a killing formation in such a short period of time with the help of the ancient beast god formation. Where did he come from? Chapter 226. The 9 palace mystic heaven formation was in the shape of a Chinese character, covering the sky with mist lingering within it. There were a total of 140 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Hall, the Snow Marquee Palace, and the Sky Crane Valley. However, every martial progenitor was trapped by the 9 palace mystic heaven formation in the 9 palaces. The difference between their martial progenitor realm cultivations was too great. Even with the ancient beast god formation, the 100 Beast Palace had no chance of winning. Therefore, Qin Yu had set up the 9 palace mystic heaven formation. He would eliminate the 10,000 ghost halls sooner or later. These people would serve as a form of interest. An illusion formation? No, it's not as simple as an illusion formation. Gu Tianlang wore a stern look as he stood alone in the Qian Palace. All he could see was a vast expanse of gray, as if he was in an endless void. He could not see the end of it or where it came from. Even if he were to blast the mist with the power of the heavens and earth, he would not be able to disperse the mist. Gu Tianling knew that something was not right. If even he was affected like this, there was no need to talk about the others. The rift around him exploded as Gu Tianlang executed a secret technique and moved forward rapidly. Regardless of the secrets of the 9 palace mystic heaven formation, the 100 Beast Palace was right in front of him. Apart from Gu Tianlang, the martial progenitors in the other areas were trying to break out of the 9 palace mystic heaven formation too. However, in reality, all of them were circling around in various palace diagrams, unable to rush out. Only the 7th-layer martial progenitor Gu Tianlang was moving closer to the 100 Beast Palace. What kind of formation is this? It's trapping over 100 martial progenitors? Isn't that too shocking? Indeed, even an advanced sacred formation master shouldn't be this terrifying. The martial progenitors trapped in the 9 palace mystic heaven formation felt like they were in a boundless illusion. However, the cultivators outside could clearly see what was happening inside the 9 palace mystic heaven formation. The 10,000 Ghost Hall had set up a huge formation. Apart from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquee Palace, there were other factions observing from afar. Everyone was astounded after witnessing the power of the 9 palace mystic heaven formation. Stop him! Qin Yu transmitted his voice to Su Xiaoya after sensing that Gu Tianlang was about to reach the Qian Palace. Among the martial progenitors, only Su Xiaoya was able to stop Gu Tianlang. Whoosh! Su Xiaoya understood his intentions. She crossed the void and charged into the Qian Palace with a mighty aura. Gu Tianlang, who was flying in the gray fog, sensed something. Ghost chi erupted from his body as 2 blood-colored ancient seals appeared in his blood-colored eyes. Chi, a sharp arrow flashing with starlight, appeared out of nowhere and aimed at Gu Tianlang's head. The arrow was so fast that deep ripples appeared in the void like the surface of water. It was as if even this space was a little unstable. Bang! Gu Tianlang's blood-red eyes flashed. 2 rays of blood-red light shot out and pierced through the starlight arrow. The arrow turned into starlight powder and scattered in the air. Lady Xiaoyu, since you've come, then show yourself. You should know that such little tricks are useless against me. Gu Tianlang looked at a place where the mist was surging. Following Gu Tianlong's words, Su Xiaoye appeared with a cold and murderous look. Since small tricks don't work, let's play something bigger. Mysterious beast runes appeared on Su Xiaoye's exquisite face. Her aura surged as specks of starlight descended from the sky. 9 stars, divine body. Gu Tianlang narrowed his eyes and looked scared. Su Xiaoye not only had the bloodline of the heavenly spirit Qilin clan, he also possessed an extremely rare 9-star divine body, which allowed him to summon the power of the stars to strengthen his body. Although he was only at the LV7 martial ancestor realm. However, in a real battle, his battle prowess was comparable to an 8th-level martial progenitor. Divine Star Seal. Su Xiaoye quickly formed hand seals. Mysterious and ancient star seals gather behind her, forming a star seal divine array. Hoo. The moment the divine array was formed, it spun rapidly like a wheel of wind and fire. Starlight burst out and pressed toward Gu Tianlang. Even a void seemed to be collapsing. Roar! Gu Tianlang yelled, and an ancient seal appeared between his eyebrows. Along with the appearance of the sky-shaking wolf howl, an extremely terrifying pressure seemed to descend from ancient times. Rumble! An earth-shattering sound of collision rang out. The astral divine formation that was whizzing over was struck by a terrifying force. The destructive power of laws collided between the heavens and earth. When the wild ripples of laws dissipated, Gu Tianlang and Su Xiaoye were revealed. At this moment, behind Gu Tianlang, there was a huge silver wolf that was more than 300 meters long with silver fur. Ancient Tianlang. Su Xiaoye stared at the giant silver wolf with a stern look. Just like how Gu Tianlang was familiar with her, Su Xiaoye was also familiar with Gu Tianlang's background. Even though Gu Tianlang was a ghost cultivator, he had the soul of the ancient Tianlang residing in his body. When the soul of the ancient Tianlang was unleashed, Gu Tianlang's battle prowess would greatly improve. Su Xiaoye dashed forward with an ancient star mirror in her hand. Streaks of star order appeared in the light mirror, forming the scene of the stars in the sky. It was quite profound. Gu Tianlang performed a hand seal and merged with the ancient Tianlang. He turned into a silver ray and charged forward. Rumble! The two fought fiercely in the void. The laws of the heavens and earth wreaked havoc, causing the entire Qian Palace to shake violently. The two of them were going all out, unleashing killer moves one after another, killing people everywhere they went. Such terrifying battle prowess, ordinary 7th-layer martial progenitors won't last more than a few moves against them. Indeed, one of them has the 9 stars god flesh, allowing him to control the power of the stars, while the other has the soul of the ancient Tianlang, allowing him to merge with the soul of the ancient Tianlang. Their battle prowess is definitely comparable to the 8th-layer martial progenitor realm. The 10,000 Ghost Palace aside, who exactly is the patriarch of the 100 Beast Palace? The crowd continued to discuss among themselves as more people gathered in the distance. Suddenly, someone moved away from the Qian Palace and glanced at the other palaces in astonishment. The martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace had already charged into the 9-palace mystical heaven formation. However, what caught their attention were the beast spirits with shocking auras surrounding the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. The beast spirits were half illusionary. However, their auras were quite shocking, which were only comparable to the martial progenitor realm. Their numbers were not comparable to the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. However, with the help of the illusionary beast spirits, they were barely able to resist the martial progenitors. These illusionary beast spirits were formed from the ancient beast god formation. The ancient beast god formation contained the martial progenitor realm beast spirits of the 100 Beast Palace. It was the reason why Su Xiaoye was confident in dealing with the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The ancient beast god formation could not leave the 100 Beast Palace. However, if an outsider wanted to break into the 100 Beast Palace, they would have to pay with their lives. Bang! Qin Yu inserted the last ancient seal into the ancient beast god formation and the nine-palace mystical heaven formation. He raised his head to look at the nine-palace mysterious heaven formation that was engaged in an intense battle, and a frightening cold light flashed in his eyes. The two formations had stabilized. It was time to hunt. Chapter 227. Roar. A dragon's roar resounded in the sky. The azure dragon, Shenron, circled Qin Yu's figure as he dashed forward with the spear in his hand. Since his identity had been exposed by the 10,000 Ghost Palace, there was no need for Qin Yu to hide his secret technique any longer. Half-martial progenitor? What kind of secret technique is that? The 100 Beast Palace has such a powerful secret technique. Their strength has surpassed the strength of a mid-tier faction. The crowd in the distance was astounded. The improvement of a cultivator's strength from the martial god realm to the half-martial progenitor realm was beyond common sense. If the secret technique was made public, the gap between the martial god realm and the martial progenitor realm would be shattered. It's you. Die. Qin Yu charged into the nine-palace mystical sky formation like a ferocious beast that had just been released from its cage. He was immediately discovered by the two martial progenitors of the Snow Marquee Mansion. The rules of the heavens and earth around the two martial progenitors surged with murderous intent as they charged at Qin Yu. Nine Serenity's Purgatory. A pitch-black glow covered the area within 1,000 zhang. Within the black glow, Qin Yu's body was covered in dense, pitch-black dragon scales. Each of the dragon scales was covered in obscure dragon runes that emitted a pitch-black glow. As his cultivation had reached the martial god realm, he was able to fully utilize the power of the Nine Serenity's Purgatory. The two martial progenitors were unable to detect Qin Yu's presence despite unleashing their rules of the heavens and earth. Qin Yu appeared like a phantom. The Nine Serenity's dragon spear was covered in dragon runes, as if the Nine Serenity's hellish dragon had appeared once again. The spear penetrated the rift and stabbed at the two martial progenitors with a tremendous aura. The two martial progenitors were instantly aware of the attack and immediately defended themselves with the power of rules. The sacred weapon in their hands unleashed a tremendous aura as it slashed at Qin Yu. Ancient space-time, deadly formation. Suddenly, a tremendous murderous intent swept the place. The space began to twist slightly, as if the two martial progenitors were trapped in a swamp. The space is being affected? Spatial laws? No, he's only a martial god. How could he comprehend the power of law? The two martial progenitors were astounded, as a strong sense of uneasiness rose in their hearts. Die. A thunder-like explosion occurred, and the void directly exploded. The power of the entire space-time ancient killing array was concentrated at the tip of the spear. The weak spots of the heavens and earth surrounding the two martial progenitors were penetrated by the spear. A killing intent that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth rushed into their bodies like a flood, wantonly destroying them. At that instant, the two martial progenitors turned into a bloody mist and disappeared. Two martial progenitors were slain instantly. Qin Yu withdrew the Nine Hells Purgatory and charged out. It would not take him much effort to kill a first-layer martial progenitor or a second-layer martial progenitor. What's going on? The two martial progenitors disappeared? Could he have been killed? How is this possible? Those are two genuine martial progenitors. After the Nine Hells Purgatory disappeared, the crowd stared with their eyes open wide when they saw the two martial progenitors disappear. Even if Qin Yu's cultivation had improved to the half-martial progenitor realm, there was no way he could have killed two martial progenitors, right? However, if they were not killed, how did the two martial progenitors disappear? While the crowd was immersed in astonishment, Qin Yu had found another 3 martial progenitors. The 3 martial progenitors were from the 10,000 Ghost Palace. They were already aware of Qin Yu's extraordinary strength when they arrived. Therefore, they did not lower their guard and attack together with all their might. Despite that, Qin Yu's secret techniques and the space-time ability of the Dragon Soul were not enough. The 3 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were killed too. 3 martial progenitors died at once. Meanwhile, Gu Tianlang, who was engaged in a battle of life and death with Su Xiaoya in the rift, was astonished. His eyes flickered with astonishment as he sensed the deaths of the three martial progenitors. 3 martial progenitors had died at once. Even if they were only Earth-level martial progenitors, he was still astonished. Could it be that the 100 Beast Palace was hiding a 7 or 8th-layer martial progenitor realm expert? 9-star God Seal. Su Xiaoya, who was surrounded by starlight, took hold of the opportunity and executed 9-star God Seals. The 9 seals merged into one and transformed into an ancient seal with the size of a fist. The seal emitted a brilliant glow as 3 moons appeared, emitting a formidable aura. Bang! Gu Tianlong's heart shuddered as he was about to make his move. However, he was struck hard, causing him to cough out blood. His body emitted a silver glow as his rules of cultivation were shattered. Su Xiaoya did not give Gu Tianlang any chance to react. She summoned a 9-star God Seal with each of her hands and suppressed Gu Tianlang. Gu Tianlang let out a furious roar as his silver fur grew rapidly. His body expanded rapidly too. In the end, he grew to over 10 zhang tall and continued to fight with Su Xiaoya. He clearly realized that, after being distracted for a brief moment, if he was careless, he might actually die in Su Xiaoya's hands. However, things did not always turn out the way he wanted them to. As the two fought fiercely, Gu Tianlang constantly sensed the deaths of martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. They were so fast that Gu Tianlang even wondered if he was hallucinating due to the influence of the formation. After all, those who had achieved the martial progenitor realm were all experienced in battles. Even if they were no match for Gu Tianlang, they would not be killed so easily. However, Qin Yu could not be treated with common sense. Even though he had yet to comprehend the rules of cultivation, he was once a martial monarch realm expert with unparalleled strength. Even Gu Tianlang and Su Xiaoya, who were the strongest among them, did not have a 1/10,000th of his understanding of the rules. Therefore, for Qin Yu, as long as he understood the weakness of the rules, ordinary martial progenitors were no match for him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Meanwhile, inside the 9-palace Xintian formation, Qin Yu was traveling through the 9-palace area and killing martial progenitors. With the blue dragon circling his body, he was undefeatable like the god of death. All of the martial ancestors that were targeted by Qin Yu ended up dying. The 3 sects had over 140 martial progenitors. In just a few minutes, more than 20 martial progenitors had been killed. That being said, most of the martial progenitors were below the 3rd-layer martial progenitor realm. Even the 4th-layer martial progenitors were being held back by Qin Yu with his beast spirits. It was not because Qin Yu was unable to take care of a level 4 or 5 martial ancestor. However, the 3 sects had too many low-level martial progenitors, thus the 9-palace Xintian formation was too weak. Therefore, Qin Yu kept killing the low-level martial progenitors. He was trying to gather the power of the 9-palace Xintian formation. With the power of the 9-palace Xintian formation and the ancient beast god formation, if Gu Tianlang was alone, Qin Yu was confident that he could kill him on his own. One was an ancient killing formation, while the other was a god-grade formation. Even if they were unable to unleash their full power, they were still powerful enough to kill a martial progenitor. The crowd and the beasts of the 100 Beast Palace saw the martial progenitors disappearing into the black light that Qin Yu had unleashed. The shocking discussion had long disappeared, replaced by a dead silence. At that instant, even if they did not want to believe it, they could easily tell that the martial progenitors had indeed been killed by Qin Yu. Such heaven-defying combat strength was simply unheard of, never seen before. It was unlikely that anyone in the 100 martial realm would be able to find someone like Qin Yu, who was able to kill enemies with a higher cultivation as if he were drinking water. Chapter 228. Puff. The spear unleashed a powerful aura like a dragon emerging from the sea, penetrating the rift and shattering the sacred weapon. For martial progenitors were killed by the spear, leaving a trail of blood. Qin Yu, who was covered in blood with a protective barrier of qi, withdrew the 9 serenities, purgatory, and charged forward once again. Under Qin Yu's frenzied attacks, the martial progenitors were killed one after another. The more martial progenitors died, the stronger the 9-palace mystical heaven formation became. As a result, Qin Yu's strength grew even more terrifying. An hour later, more than half of the martial progenitors had been slain. Less than 20 to 30% of the first-layer martial progenitors were left. Qin Yu was startled as he sensed the battle at the Qianqian Palace and confirmed that Su Xiaoye was keeping Gu Tianling busy. His eyes flickered with a cold, murderous intent as he sensed a familiar aura. Qin Yu sprang into the sky and appeared in front of 8 martial progenitors in the blink of an eye. They were all martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The one surrounded by the 7 was none other than Mo Li Huang, who had forced Qin Yu to flee in a sorry state at Luogue City. "It's you?" Mo Li Huang was shocked when he saw Qin Yu surrounded by a ferocious aura, before his face was filled with a ferocious, murderous intent. There was no way he could stand a chance against the others. However, he was accompanied by 7 martial progenitors. Among the 7 martial progenitors, 1 was at the 6th-layer martial progenitor realm, 2 were at the 5th-layer martial progenitor realm, and 4 were at the 4th-layer martial progenitor realm. Regardless of Qin Yu's strength, there was no way he could turn the situation around. "Kill him," Mo Li Huang said coldly. "Kill him? But Elder Gu has ordered us to capture him alive." The 6th-layer martial progenitor hesitated and was astounded, even though Mo Li Huang's cultivation was the weakest among them. He was different from them who were from the Hunter martial realm. Mo Li Huang was from the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction. The 10,000 Ghost Palace was a faction founded by a martial monarch under the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction. Behind Mo Li Huang, there was also a martial emperor powerhouse. Therefore, even though their cultivation was stronger than Mo Li Huang's, their status was lower than his. "Don't worry, we just need to imprison his soul. After all, he will be killed sooner or later." Mo Li Huang's voice was cold as he ordered once more, "Kill him now." Just like Gu Tianlang, Mo Li Huang was able to sense the life and death of the martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Hall. Although he had no idea how Qin Yu had done it, he believed that Qin Yu had something to do with the deaths of the martial progenitors. If they continued to ignore Qin Yu, then even if they were able to capture Qin Yu in the end, their vitality would definitely be greatly damaged. This was not what Mo Li Huang wanted to see. For the myriad Ghost Palace to develop to its current state, their lineage had put in a lot of effort. He could not allow himself to be buried in Qin Yu's hands. "Kill!" The eyes of the martial progenitor flickered ferociously. A strong, ghastly aura surged from his figure, which transformed into a 100-zhong-wide, ghastly black hole that charged in Qin Yu's direction. The aura of the ghastly black hole was so strong that it felt like it was going to devour the rift. "A martial art, huh?" Qin Yu glanced at the ghastly vortex with great interest. Following this, a pitch-black glow swept across the place. The people of the myriad Ghost Palace were encapsulated within it. Whoosh! Qin Yu, whose figure was covered in pitch-black dragon scales, swiftly dodged the attack of the 6th-layer martial progenitor. He instantly appeared in front of Mo Li Huang's group of 6 and activated the ancient space-time deadly formation. Crap! Mo Li Huang's hair stood on its end as he sensed the space around him being twisted. An ancient bronze mirror appeared in his hand. Obscure, ghastly runes were unleashed on the mirror, which emitted a mysterious glow. Crack! As soon as the ancient bronze mirror appeared, a pitch-black ancient dragon sprang forward with a ferocious, murderous intent. The ancient bronze mirror shuddered violently before it exploded into pieces. This ancient treasure of extraordinary origin, under Qin Yu's all-out attack and the might of the double slaughtering array, directly turned into bronze fragments and exploded. Qin Yu was astounded. His attack was clearly targeting Mo Li Huang. However, in the blink of an eye, they were all attracted by the ancient bronze mirror, and all the attacks landed on the ancient mirror. It was so quick that even Qin Yu did not have time to react. That was close. Mo Li Huang's face turned pale as he could not conceal the fear in his eyes. Although he was heartbroken that the ancient bronze mirror had been destroyed, he was glad that he was still alive. Judging from the power of Qin Yu's attack, he would have died for sure if he had been hit head-on. Set up the formation. Mo Li Huang quickly retreated, and as he did so, another ancient array flag appeared in his hand. The formation flag exploded, causing countless evil and scorching ghastly runes to appear, forming a giant ancient formation. The ancient formation covered an area with a radius of 100 feet around him. Strange laughter could be heard. The 5 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace immediately entered the ancient formation and took their respective positions. Boundless Ghost Qi and True Yuan flowed into the ancient formation, causing its power to become even more terrifying. It's the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Qin Yu recognized that evil and blazing ancient formation. He was a bit surprised. The Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation was one of Ghost Emperor Zhentian's famous deadly formations. In the hands of Ghost Emperor Zhentian, this array had killed many Emperor Masters. It could be said that the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation's notoriety had shocked countless Emperor Realm experts. Of course, Mo Li Huang, who was only a second-level martial progenitor, could not set up the complete Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation. The Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation could only kill martial progenitors at most. Boom! A terrifying aura shot up into the sky from the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Then, Boundless Ghost Qi gathered and turned into a ferocious ghost that was 100 feet tall. The ghost held a gigantic, flaming, ghastly saber in its hand. It was surrounded by dark red, evil, ghastly runes, like a dark red, ferocious armor. This ferocious ghost was the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost. It was formed by absorbing the Leaf Fire and Ghost Dao energy. It could devour souls to become stronger. Ghost Emperor Zhentian's Leaf Fire Evil Ghost was comparable to a peak Emperor Realm expert. Whoosh! The Leaf Fire Evil Ogre is holding a huge ghost knife. Carrying a vast amount of power, it slashes at Qin Yu from the air. Whoosh! At this moment, the 6th-level martial progenitor noticed that Mo Li Huang was in danger and immediately rushed back. He and Leaf Fire Evil Ghost formed a 2-pronged attack, trapping Qin Yu. Ghost Eye of Destruction. The Ghost Eye of Destruction trembled in Qin Yu's eyes, and countless mysterious, ghastly runes appeared. A deep ray of light condensed in his eyes and shot towards the Leaf Fire Evil Ogre at lightning speed. Crack! A series of clear, cracking sounds could be heard. On the body of the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost that was slashing at Qin Yu, the ghostly runes on its body immediately shattered, leaving behind an empty area. Mo Li Huang and the others standing in the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation were astounded and immediately attacked with all their might. Ancient Space-Time Deadly Formation. Space-Time Reversal. At the same time, the space surrounding Qin Yu started to distort and ripple. The dragon's soul uttered a deafening roar as the dragon runes on its scales flickered. A space-time force strong enough to affect the heavens and earth exploded at this moment. It was the martial progenitor who had executed a secret technique of the Ghost Dao, whose face was covered in evil, ghastly runes. His speed was greatly affected by the impact of the ancient space-time deadly formation and the space-time reversal. His destruction attack was also easily dodged by Qin Yu. Sky-devouring Dragon Seal. Qin Yu ignored the 6th-level martial progenitor. His figure flickered as he charged at Mo Li Huang and the others. A giant dragon head appeared at the tip of the 9 Netherworld's dragon spear. Mo Li Huang and the others executed their power of laws, but a giant hole was devoured by the spear, allowing Qin Yu to dash into the Leaf Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Chapter 229. The core of the formation is broken. How is that possible? Seeing Qin Yu, who was rapidly flying toward him, Mo Li Huang's pupils abruptly shrunk. He was in disbelief. The Leaf Fire Evil Demon Formation was an ancient formation that the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch had never taught to outsiders. The Leaf Fire Evil Demon Formation was something that his master had comprehended from the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch Boulder. Even if his master was here, he would not be able to see the core of the Leaf Fire Evil Demon Formation in an instant. However, earlier, Chinyu had rushed over without the slightest hesitation. It was not a coincidence that he had broken the core of the formation, but he had discovered its location. This was the reason why Mo Li Huang was so astonished. Even though Chinyu was an advanced sacred formation master, his capabilities were still too shocking. Could it be that Chinyu had seen the Leaf Fire Evil Demon Formation before? Ancient space-time deadly formation. Chinyu's spear shuddered as he gathered his murderous intent and attacked Mo Li Huang at lightning speed. Bang! The rift vibrated vigorously as the 5 martial progenitors who were trying to stop Chinyu were sent flying. With a flicker, the rules of cultivation surrounding Mo Li Huang were shattered as a bloody hole appeared on his forehead. A one-shot kill. Damn it! Lu Chong, the martial progenitor who had just broken through the seal of time and space, was astounded. Mo Li Huang was a second-layer martial progenitor, but he had been killed by Chinyu with a single move. It was something that he never thought would happen. Dragon Spear dominating the sky. Chinyu's eyes turned cold as he fired a killing blow. The ancient space-time deadly formation, the 9 Palace mystical formation, and the ancient beast god formation merged into one. Under the guidance of the 9 netherworlds Dragon Spear, the formation sprang forward with the 6-layer martial progenitor as the center. Die! The 6th-layer martial progenitor was infuriated as the rules of cultivation around him exploded. The ghastly black hole spun rapidly with a devouring force, which shattered the ripples of the 3 deadly formations and headed in Chinyu's direction. Beast Spirit appear. Chinyu did not dodge it. Within the beast god ancient formation, a giant beast soul with golden horns descended from the sky. The horned beast spirit stomped its hooves, filling the sky with golden light. With a deafening explosion, the howling black hole was blocked by the horned beast soul. The golden-horned godly bull was one of the strongest martial progenitor realm sacred beasts in the history of the 100 Beast Palace. At his peak, he could easily kill a LV5 or LV6 martial progenitor. Even though it was only a beast spirit, it would not have any problem dealing with a 6-layer martial progenitor within a short period of time. As such, the 100 Beast Palace was able to fight against over 100 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Palace and the other sects with only 40 martial progenitors. Without these martial ancestor-level beast spirits, even with the help of the ancient beast god formation and the 9 Palace mysterious heaven formation, the 100 Beast Palace would have fallen long ago. Forbidden Art, Immortal Sacrifice. The moment the golden horned celestial cow attacked, Chinyu's body emitted a white light. The white light condensed and turned into a dazzling ray of light that flashed through the void. Crap! The 6-layer martial progenitor was astounded as his hair stood on end. He immediately attacked with all his might, causing the rules of the heavens and earth to surge like a tide. Puff! However, the 6th-layer martial progenitor had underestimated the power of the immortal sacrifice art. The rules of the heavens and earth surrounding him were shattered as a hideous hole appeared on his chest, with blood pouring out from it. However, at the critical moment of life and death, he managed to avoid the fatal spot. Heavenly stellar sacred light. However, Chinyu immediately executed his killing blow as the star dragon seal appeared on his forehead. A ray of light penetrated the destructive rules of the heavens and earth and struck the 6th-layer martial progenitor's figure. His flesh exploded as the 6th-layer martial progenitor's head was penetrated, allowing his soul to escape from his body. Soul-devouring curse. Chinyu secretly executed a secret technique to devour the soul of the 6th-layer martial progenitor as if he was waiting for his prey. At this point, a high-level martial progenitor had finally fallen. Elder Qi is dead. Who exactly is he? Seeing Mo Li Huang and the 6th-layer martial progenitor falling one after another, The 5 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were utterly terrified. Even a 6th-layer martial progenitor had been slain with ease. Qin Yu's strength had completely exceeded their expectations. Whoosh! Qin Yu did not hesitate as he charged at the 5 martial progenitors with a flicker. Kill! Even though the 5 martial progenitors wore stern looks on their faces. However, they knew that they would be digging their own graves if they were to split up. Only by teaming up would they have a chance to survive. Heaven battling Azure Dragon, Demon Eyes of Destruction, Heaven devouring Dragon Seal, Heavenly Stellar Sacred Light. Since Mo Li Huang and the 6th-layer martial progenitor had been slain, Qin Yu was no longer in a rush to deal with the 5 martial progenitors. He did not use the forbidden immortal sacrifice art. Instead, he used the secret techniques of the dragon tribe to defeat the 5 martial progenitors. Following this, Qin Yu weaved through the 9-palace mystical sky formation like a phantom. More martial progenitors were killed by the 3 sections. From the 1st-layer martial progenitor realm to the 2nd-layer martial progenitor realm, the 3rd-layer martial progenitor realm, the 4th-layer martial progenitor realm, and the 5th-layer martial progenitor realm. Every martial progenitor that Qin Yu stumbled into was killed instantly. What exactly happened? It was Gu Tianlang who was fighting against Su Xiaoye. When he sensed that less than 30 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were left, the uneasy feeling in his heart grew stronger. However, it just so happened that Su Xiaoye's attacks became more and more ruthless, causing him to be unable to escape in the slightest. Lady Xiaoye, are you sure you want to fall out with the 10,000 Ghost Palace for that kid? Gu Tianlong's silver fur emitted a glow, which formed a giant silver moon behind him. A giant godly wolf appeared from the silver moon. Gu Tianlong's aura skyrocketed, which vaguely reached the peak 8th-layer martial progenitor realm. You've brought so many people here and sealed off the 10,000 Ghost Palace. And now you're asking me if I'm going to fall out with the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Su Xiaoye's eyes became colder as her figure was encapsulated by the glow of stars. She had no idea why Qin Yu had destroyed the Luo Gui city. However, she was clear about one thing. Not only did Gu Tianlang want to capture Qin Yu, he also wanted to use Qin Yu as an excuse to capture her. Therefore, since Gu Tianlang had already fallen out with her, she would not sit still and wait for her death. Don't tell me you're seriously thinking that the kid only destroyed a city is enough for me to show up in person and bring so many martial progenitors with me. You're from a heavenly domain too, thus you should know about the past of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. Therefore, I don't mind telling you some things. That kid has something that the Sacred Island has always wanted to know, the secrets of the 1st saint and the 7th saint that betrayed him. Now, you should know how serious the trouble that kid is involved in, right? Gu Tianlang did not want to talk about it. However, since the martial progenitor realm of the 10,000 Ghost Palace had suffered such a great loss, and Su Xiaoye was trying her best to hold him back, he had no choice but to tell her the truth. Su Xiaoye was from the heavenly domain and was closely related to the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarch's line. She should know the pros and cons of the matter. The 1st saint and the 7th saint? As he thought, Su Xiaoye's expression stiffened hearing this. If what Gu Tianlang had said was true, they would be in great trouble. Bang! At that instant, a terrifying tale descended upon them, causing the 9-palace mystical sky formation and the ancient beast god formation to tremble vigorously, as if they were going to collapse at any second. The aura of the tale. Gu Tianlang and Su Xiaoye were startled as they sensed the aura. Martial progenitor realm, peak 9th cycle. Qin Yu's expression froze as he raised his head and glanced into the sky. There, a figure appeared out of nowhere. Chapter 230. The person who had appeared in the sky was simply standing in the rift. However, the aura he was emitting felt like a 10,000 zhang tall godly sword. A tremendous aura came crashing down upon Qin Nan. All the living beings in the area felt suffocated, apart from the ordinary beasts of the 100-beast palace. Even a nine-palace mysterious sky array could clearly feel that kind of pressure. The nine-palace mystic heaven formation, which was originally filled with intense and chaotic battles, became deathly silent. The martial progenitors immediately glanced into the sky. Even though they could only see a blurry mist, they could clearly sense it. A terrifying presence had appeared in the sky. Even those beast spirits who were not very intelligent could not help but stop in their tracks. Such a terrifying aura. Is that peak martial progenitor realm? Or half martial monarch realm? The 10,000 Ghost Palace has such a terrifying presence. The crowd who had gathered in the distance could not conceal the astonishment in their eyes when they saw the person. Even though they were quite far away, they did not dare to move at all. Even though the person did not do anything, they could sense it. If they were to move recklessly, they would be in great danger. A peak 9th Revolution martial progenitor realm expert. Even the person from the 10,000 Ghost Palace is here. Su Xiaoya's eyes flickered with disbelief. Even though the martial progenitor realm was only divided into 9 layers, it did not mean one would be able to break through to the martial monarch realm. The difference between the martial progenitor realm and the martial monarch realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Therefore, a 9th layer martial progenitor would need to undergo 9 nirvanas. Only after undergoing 9 nirvanas would one be able to break through to the martial monarch realm. Even though the 9th Revolution martial progenitor realm and the 9th Revolution martial progenitor realm were the same realm. However, each difference in the nirvanas would result in a huge difference in strength. According to Su Xiaoya's knowledge, even the 10,000 Ghost Palace only had one peak 9th Revolution martial progenitor realm expert. He was the person most likely to achieve the martial monarch realm and the 100 martial realm. In addition to Gu Tianlang, even the person had appeared. This caused Su Xiaoya's heart to sink. She could not help secretly guessing whether Qin Yu was really involved in the matter Gu Tianlang had talked about. Third senior brother actually knows. Although the newcomers were indeed top experts from the Myriad Ghost Temple, Gu Tianlang's face darkened. In the entire Myriad Ghost Palace, the only person he feared was his third senior brother. His third senior brother was not only the strongest expert in the Myriad Ghost Palace. Even among the martial progenitors of the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarch's lineage, he was considered one of the best, and had even caught the attention of the Sacred Island. When Qin Yu saw the person who had appeared, his eyes narrowed slightly. If it was just an ordinary LV9 martial ancestor, with his trump cards, the Ancient Beast God formation, and the 9-Palace Mysterious Sky formation, Qin Yu was still confident that he could win. But the one who came was at the peak of the 9th level. The trouble was not on the same level. How do you plan to fight? Inside the divine dragon ancient seal, the dragon's soul had a solemn expression. He was well aware of his current situation. The 100 Beast Palace was currently sealed, and there was no way to teleport out. If Qin Yu were to abandon the formation and flee, he would not be able to outrun a peak 9th cycle martial progenitor. Therefore, using the 2 formations was the right choice. With the might of these 2 formations, Qin Yu's battle prowess had increased by more than just a little. Let's get rid of these small fries first. The thought crossed Qin Yu's mind. He did not chase after the martial progenitors, but quickly performed a hand seal. The 9-Palace Mysterious Sky formation and the Ancient Beast God formation began to vibrate vigorously. In just a few breaths' time, both the martial progenitors of the Myriad Ghost Palace and the 100 Beast Palace were knocked out of the 9-Palace Mysterious Sky formation. Facing a peak 9th Revolution martial ancestor, Qin Yu would have to utilize all of his battle prowess in order to defeat him. We're finally out. The martial progenitors of the Myriad Ghost Palace and the other sects let out sighs of relief, even though they had no idea what had happened. But at least they had finally escaped from the killing formation. What's going on? Did the others? However, the martial progenitors soon collected their thoughts. An uncontrollable chill ran down their spines, causing their bodies to turn icy. The 3 sects initially had over 140 martial progenitors. However, only over 30 of them had made it out alive. The rest of them were all dead. Not all of them possessed the strongest cultivation, as more than 10 of them were second or third layer martial progenitors. In other words, many of the 6th-layer and 5th-layer martial progenitors had fallen among the 140 cultivators. They're all dead. How'd he do it? Was he pretending to be weak, and his cultivation has actually reached the advanced martial progenitor realm? Even an advanced martial progenitor wouldn't possess such terrifying strength. It seems like a great battle is about to take place. The crowd in the distance was astounded too. Their astonishment was on par with the peak 9th cycle martial progenitor realm expert who had suddenly appeared. Damn it! Gu Tianlang wore a dark expression after seeing the remaining martial progenitors of the Myriad Ghost Palace. He had the urge to tear Qin Yu into pieces and burn his bones into ashes. But now, he had no choice but to withhold his murderous intent after glancing at his 3rd senior brother who was standing in the air. 3rd senior brother. Gu Tianlang summoned his courage and flew toward his 3rd senior brother, Bailey Xionghuang, and greeted. You're pretty good. Master spent so much effort to nurture the strength of the 10,000 Ghost Palace to its current state. Yet, you've destroyed nearly half of it. Bailey Xionghuang said calmly. His gaze was fixed on a 9-palace mystical heaven formation instead of looking at Gu Tianlang. A faint layer of black, ghostly light appeared in his eyes. The misty 9-palace mysterious heaven formation seemed to be transparent in his eyes. Qin Yu's figure clearly appeared in his eyes. 3rd senior brother, I didn't expect it to turn out like this. I would have asked you to come out of seclusion if I wasn't worried about disturbing you. Gu Tianlang knew he had no choice but to admit his mistake after losing so many people. Oh, so you're worried about disturbing me instead of worrying about me knowing what happened between the 1st saint and the 7th saint. Bailey Xionghuang said calmly. 3rd senior brother, so you already know. Gu Tianlang's heart sank. He didn't care about Mo Li Huang's death, but now Bailey Xionghuang knew that Qin Yu was related to the 1st saint and the 7th saint. His original ambition was probably going to fall through. In order to prevent me from taking the credit for finding the ancient deity token, you brought people to catch him behind my back. What an idiot. Do you know what the ancient deity token means to the Ghost Emperor? Bailey Xionghuang finally looked away and stared at Gu Tianlang coldly. Luckily, I came here in person today. If this man escaped, the clue of the ancient deity token would be lost, and you'd know what an angry Ghost Emperor is like. Gu Tianlang's face turned pale, and cold sweat kept popping out. Although he didn't know much about the secret of the ancient deity token, he knew Bailey Xionghuang's character and knew that Bailey Xionghuang wouldn't say such fake words on purpose. If they were to truly allow Qin Yu to escape today, then what Bailey Xionghuang said would very likely happen. Chapter 231. The Divine Power of the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon. How did he get it? Bailey Xionghuang glanced at Gu Tianlang, whose face was pale and covered in cold sweat. Bailey Xionghuang looked at Qin Yu in the 9-palace mystic sky formation again. Within the 9-palace mysterious heaven array, the dusky mist and pitch-black light dispersed. Qin Yu's figure was directly revealed. A trace of astonishment appeared in Bailey Xionghuang's indifferent eyes. Qin Yu knew that the 9 Serenities purgatory was useless to him, so he withdrew it. Bailey Xionghuang was curious about how Qin Yu had managed to cultivate the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon's divine power. Even if Qin Yu had the inheritance of the 1st saint, he couldn't have obtained the inheritance of the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon. Only those from a dragon tribe could obtain the divine power of the dragon tribe. As far as Bailey Xionghuang knew, there was only one martial monarch in the entire heaven region. However, the martial monarch had died 1,000 years ago. Even his divine bones and divine soul had disappeared, leaving no inheritance behind. He had been completely erased from the heaven region. Whoosh! Faint starlight flashed in the sky. A figure passed through the 9-palace mystic sky formation and appeared in front of Qin Yu. It was Su Xiaoye, who had been thrown out of the formation. Su Xiaoye stopped 10 feet away from Qin Yu and looked at Qin Yu with flickering eyes. Even Bailey Xionghuang had appeared. Gu Tianlang must be telling the truth. However, Su Se couldn't understand why Qin Yu had obtained the inheritance of the two saints under the sky suppression Ghost Emperor. Then why did he go to Luo Gui City to cause trouble? Wasn't he trying to expose his identity? He's a rank 9 martial ancestor. Even if we work together, we won't be able to defeat him. You'd better tell the people of the 100-Beast Palace to retreat. Sensing Su Xiaoye's arrival, Qin Yu didn't turn around. He held his spear and looked at Bailey Xionghuang. Who exactly are you? Su Xiaoye asked. It doesn't matter who I am. At least, I'm not your enemy. Qin Yu said indifferently. Then I'll ask you directly. Did you obtain the inheritance of the 10,000 ghost palaces, a former palace master? This was what Su Xiaoye was concerned about. If Qin Yu was really involved in the matter between the first Holy Sun and the seventh Holy Sun under the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor's command, the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor's first Holy Sun and the seventh Holy Sun, she, who had teamed up with Qin Yu today, would probably be in a lot of trouble. You actually know about this. Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before he immediately reacted. Is that why they're here? Memories flashed through his mind. The only thing that could reveal that he had obtained the ancient immortal token was the skeleton Ghost King. In the Battle of Luo Gui City, the skeleton Ghost King was disintegrated, and its remains were scattered all over the city. Unfortunately, when dealing with Mo Li Huang previously, Qin Yu directly killed him. He did not extract his soul and refine it. Otherwise, he should be able to obtain a lot of useful information. Su Xiaoye's heart sank. Qin Yu's words undoubtedly told her the correct answer. Rumble. At this moment, Bailey Xionghuang took a step forward and appeared above the 9-palace Xiantian formation. He stomped his foot in the air, and the vast laws of heaven and earth as vast as the sea exploded and engulfed everything. The 9-palace Xiantian formation shook violently, and the 9-palace formation floated up and down. Countless formation runes immediately collapsed. However, the 9-palace Xiantian formation did not collapse. The might of the ancient era's killing array was not something to joke about. It's not simple, but Bailey Xionghuang threw out another punch. Ghostly runes covered his right fist, and it turned into a 5-zhong giant fist. It smashed down from the sky like a meteor, suppressing and destroying everything. No matter how powerful the ancient formation was, it was futile in the face of absolute power. Double formation, form, Qin Yu shouted in a low voice. He started to form hand seals with his hands. The ancient beast god formation and the 9-palace Xiantian formation immediately turned into a double-killing formation, and it spun wildly like a giant millstone. Boom! Another earth-shattering sound was heard, and the terrifying aftershock of the attack turned into a destructive hurricane. Giant mountains in the distance collapsed, and the ground began to crack open. The palaces of the 100-Beast Palace under the double-killing formations collapsed due to the impact. The beasts below Wushang's level began to bleed from their orifices, as their souls were severely injured. Qin Yu, who was closest to the attack, spat out a line of blood after his figure shuddered violently. Su Xiaoye's face turned slightly pale, and she immediately withdrew from the 9-palace Xiantian formation. As Qin Yu had mentioned, facing Bailey Xionghuang, who was a 9th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator, it was useless. Even if she were to attack, it would not make any difference. Crack! Bailey Xionghuang's figure sprang forward like a sharp arrow. The double-killing formation immediately had a gap between the 9-palace Xiantian formation and the ancient beast god formation. Thus, it was unable to stop Bailey Xionghuang. Whoosh! Bailey Xionghuang grabbed with his right hand, causing a ghastly aura to surge forward like a river, which transformed into a giant black seal that suppressed downward. On the giant seal, there was a lifelike and ferocious evil spirit that exuded an extremely evil aura. Ancient space-time killing formation. God executing killing formation. Qin Yu's eyes were locked onto Bailey Xionghuang's figure. Heaven battling azure dragon. Heaven devouring dragon seal. Heavenly lunar sacred light. One after another, divine abilities and secret arts were unleashed like a storm. However, Qin Yu's true killing blow was the ancient space-time killing formation formed by the murderous intent of the god-executing killing formation. Kill. At that instant, Qin Yu's formidable true qi surged into the 9 netherworld dragon spear. The murderous intent of the god-executing killing formation was accumulated at the tip of the dragon spear, as it unleashed the power of the ancient space-time killing formation and the martial skills. This murderous intent, Bailey Xionghuang, who was sprinting toward Qin Yu with the giant seal in his hand. He could not help but feel a chill down his spine when he sensed the terrifying murderous intent that was locked onto him. Despite having experienced hundreds of battles, he clearly knew that the murderous intent would only appear when one's life was in danger. Bailey Xionghuang found it hard to believe. Qin Yu, who had yet to achieve the martial progenitor realm, possessed such a terrifying murderous intent. This guy. A strange look flashed across Bailey Xionghuang's indifferent eyes as he became more interested in Qin Yu. His attack did not change, but streams of terrifying ghostly energy merged with the giant black seal. The ferocious ghost on the giant seal became more and more terrifying as it pounced toward Qin Yu, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The ferocious ghost and the dragon-patterned spear clashed in the air, as if a giant wave had appeared out of nowhere. A shockwave visible to the naked eye swept out in all directions, destroying everything in its path. The 9-palace mysterious heaven formation and the ancient beast god formation immediately turned into ruins and disappeared. However, Qin Yu did not retreat at all. He continued to attack with the spear unity. Immortal sacrificial art. Qin Yu's body flickered with white light as he executed the immortal sacrificial art. The ferocious ghost faced off for a moment, then immediately turned into ghostly qi and dispersed. Boom! However, in the next moment, the giant black seal suppressed Qin Yu. Qin Yu's attack was immediately hindered as his body shuddered violently. The dragon-patterned spear on the 9 netherworld dragon spear cracked, and even the body of the spear began to crack. Cough, cough. Qin Yu was knocked a few hundred zhang away as he continued to cough up blood. His aura was extremely weak, indicating that he had suffered a serious injury. Seal. Bailey Xionghuang slammed his hands onto the giant seal. The giant seal emitted a stronger aura, crushing downward like a giant mountain. Despite Qin Yu continuously executing the mystical skills of the dragon tribe, he was unable to resist it. Dragon Soul. Qin Yu groaned in his heart as he ordered the Dragon Soul to execute its space-time ability. The entire killing formation and the god-executing formation began to tremble. Bang! However, at that instant, a blue ray appeared out of nowhere, causing the air to tremble slightly. The giant seal was immediately penetrated as a figure appeared before Qin Yu. It was none other than the hunchbacked, one-armed old man. Chapter 232. The one-armed old man was dressed in a gray robe. His back was hunched, and he looked lethargic. He did not look impressive at all. However, it was this one-armed old man who had pointed his finger just now. The giant seal that Qin Yu could not resist, even with his full strength, had been pierced through and dissipated. This person, Bailey Xionghuang, looked at the one-armed old man with a serious expression. The one-armed old man looked lifeless and unremarkable. It made him feel extremely dangerous, and even his heart palpitated ever since he had reached the peak of the 9th rank of the martial ancestor realm. Bailey Xionghuang had met his match in the martial ancestor realm. However, no one had ever made him feel so threatened. Could it be a true martial emperor realm expert? That was not right. Bailey Xionghuang had seen many martial emperors. He could instantly sense the fluctuations of pressure that were above the different levels. What a terrifying feeling. Su Xiaoya stared at the white-haired old man, her bright eyes flickering. This aura, not only Bailey Xionghuang and Su Xiaoya, but Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were also sizing up the one-armed old man. The expressions of the two of them were a little surprised. They had never seen this one-armed old man before. However, Qin Yu and the dragon's soul felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he was an acquaintance that they had not met for a long time. After neutralizing Bailey Xionghuang's attack, the one-armed old man turned around. His turbid and dim gaze was sizing up Qin Yu from head to toe. It also seemed like he was confirming something. After a while, the one-armed old man flicked his finger. Numerous lightning runes descended in an orderly manner. They turned into a profound, ancient formation array and trapped Qin Yu within it. This is a strong sense of shock flashed across the dragon soul's huge dragon eyes. Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock Technique. Qin Yu also looked at that one-armed old man with an expression of disbelief. This secret technique used the true power of heavenly thunder to lock one's mind, seal one's soul, and suppress one's soul. It was said that once one was suppressed, there was no chance of survival. However, this was only a legend in the outside world. In fact, the Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock technique had a fatal flaw. Once they knew about it, even those with no cultivation would be able to break it easily. However, there were less than 5 people in the entire Qingyun realm who knew the weakness of the Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock technique. This was because the Heavenly Thunder Soul Locking technique was created by Qin Yu's master. Therefore, the only people who knew the weakness of this secret technique were those from Qin Yu's sect. This one-armed old man, could it be, may I know who you are? Why are you interfering in this matter? Bailey Xionghuang spoke in a cold voice. From the looks of it, this one-armed old man seemed to have a close relationship with Qin Yu. If that was the case, it wouldn't be a good thing for him, because he wasn't confident that he could deal with a one-armed old man. With your cultivation, you should be able to tell that you are no match for me. Back off. The one-armed old man looked at Bailey Xionghuang. His eyes were dim, without the slightest fluctuation. It was as if, in his eyes, Bailey Xionghuang was merely an ordinary cultivator. Do you know what kind of power my 10,000 Ghost Palace is? Not to mention the 100 Martial Realm. Even in the entire 7 Great Martial Realms, those who dare to provoke my 10,000 Ghost Palace have never had a good ending. Bailey Xionghuang's eyes darkened as he threatened in a cold voice. The one-armed old man didn't waste any more words and struck out with his palm. There wasn't any shocking power, just a simple palm image fiercely striking at Bailey Xionghuang. However, it made Bailey Xionghuang's hair stand on end, and the sense of crisis multiplied. The one-armed old man's control of the laws of heaven and earth had reached a level where it didn't overflow. Bailey Xionghuang admitted that he was far inferior to this kind of method. Could it be that he has already touched the half-step emperor realm? Bailey Xionghuang's heart sank. He shouted loudly, and a majestic and terrifying law of heaven and earth erupted from his body. An ancient seal surrounded by terrifying ghost law condensed, but it instantly disappeared into the void. In the next instant, deep ripples appeared in the void and turned into 1,000 zhang wide vortex of ghost qi. Numerous ferocious, pitch-black evil spirits with extremely terrifying auras continuously emerge from the ghost qi vortex like fountains at the bottom of the water. In an instant, tens of thousands of black ghosts appeared in the sky, scattered all over the weeping ghost vortex. If one looked at it from afar, they would be able to see it. The tens of thousands of pitch-black evil spirits were arranged into a mysterious and unfathomable ghostly picture. It emitted a supreme pressure that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. 10,000 ghost picture? Gu Tianlang, who was watching the battle from afar, saw Bailey Xionghuang use the strongest technique of the 10,000 Ghost Palace, and he couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. That one-armed old man who looked lifeless actually had such terrifying strength? Bang! The 10,000 ghost picture and the palm image instantly met. Huge cracks spread out in the void like a spider web, and half of the sky was covered. However, in just an instant, the 10,000 ghost picture collapsed, and all the ferocious ghosts exploded. Bailey Xionghuang's body shook violently, and he coughed up blood as he quickly retreated. The one-armed old man took a step forward, covering a distance of a few hundred zhang, and threw out another palm attack. As the rift shattered, Bailey Xionghuang was severely injured once again. His skin and flesh were torn apart, and blood flowed out continuously. Even his bones were vaguely visible. Damn it! Bailey Xionghuang's expression changed greatly when he saw the one-armed old man throwing out another palm attack. He cursed furiously and immediately turned into a ghostly glow, disappearing into the rift. After the previous two battles, he clearly knew that he was no match for the one-armed old man. If he didn't run away now, he would most likely lose his life here. Quick run! Gu Tianlang and the others were startled when they saw Bailey Xionghuang fleeing with serious injuries. They immediately fled without hesitation. Bailey Xionghuang, who is a 9th-layer martial progenitor, was defeated? Who is that old man? A bulky man exclaimed. He was the leader of a middle-ranked faction, and his cultivation had reached the advanced martial progenitor realm. He knew how terrifying Bailey Xionghuang's strength was. However, despite his outstanding strength, Bailey Xionghuang had been defeated in just 2 attacks. How could he not be astounded? Most shockingly, he was unable to determine the strength of the one-armed old man. Even though he had just witnessed the one-armed old man's attack, he was still completely unaware of the one-armed old man's strength. How long are you planning to stay here? The one-armed old man did not react to the people of the 10,000 Ghost Palace fleeing. He simply turned his head and glanced into the rift. The one-armed old man's originally turbid gaze was now as sharp as lightning. A figure appeared out of thin air where the one-armed old man was looking. It was a man wearing a black robe with a third eye on his forehead. The three-eyed man glanced at the one-armed old man, before glancing at Qinyu, before fleeing without wasting any time. Three-eyed? Could it be Mo Changsheng? Su Xiaoye's eyes flickered with astonishment as she watched the man disappear into the distance. Mo Changsheng was the leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect. No one knew where he came from, but his cultivation was considered top-notch even among the 7 great martial realms. Before establishing the Heavenly Demon Sect, Mo Changsheng had even conquered the demonic sects of the 3 martial realms. However, after establishing the Heavenly Demon Sect, Mo Changsheng had kept a low profile and rarely showed himself. Who would have thought that Mo Changsheng would be here for the upcoming battle? Su Xiaoye was left speechless. Qinyu was really good at picking his opponents. Those he had picked were all troublesome people. Chapter 233. After defeating Bailey Xionghuang and scaring Mo Changsheng away, the one-armed old man turned around to look at Qinyu. At this moment, the heavenly lightning soul-locking technique around Qinyu still had not disappeared. The one-armed old man looked at Qinyu and pointed at him. The heavenly lightning soul-lock technique immediately struck down with destructive lightning. Judging from the power of the attack, even a martial progenitor would die without a doubt if he was struck by it. However, Qinyu simply took 9 steps in the air and walked out of the ancient lightning formation. All the lightning bolts that were crashing down disappeared in an instant. 9 heavens, thunder, transformation steps. The only way to break the heavenly lightning soul lock technique. Although it was a simple 9 steps in the air, it contained a supreme Dao skill. If an ordinary person could comprehend it, they would benefit from it for life. Junior brother, a layer of green light appeared on the one-armed old man's body, and a mysterious and profound aura appeared. At this moment, the one-armed old man, who was originally lethargic, suddenly emitted a supreme, domineering aura. Eldest, senior brother? Qinyu's eyes widened in shock. He was all too familiar with the supreme, domineering aura emitted by the layer of green light. In Qinyu's previous life, there were only 4 disciples in his sect. Apart from him and Xing Luo, there was a senior brother and a senior sister. When Qinyu and Xing Luo had just become disciples of his master, their senior brother had taken good care of them. It was precisely because of this that Qinyu felt so shocked. At the time when Qin Yu became his master's disciple, his eldest martial brother was already a martial emperor. Later on, due to his obsession, he was stuck at the peak of the martial emperor realm and could not become a martial emperor. However, since his senior brother was still alive after 1,000 years, his cultivation must have reached the martial emperor realm. Otherwise, he would not have been able to survive until now. However, not only did his senior brother's appearance change, but his cultivation had also dropped to the martial ancestor realm. Even though his battle strength was enough to easily crush a peak 9th rank martial ancestor realm, he was still a martial ancestor. What had happened in the past few years? His eldest senior brother had actually become like this? It really is you. Lin Changqing couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes when he saw Qin Yu display the 9 Esoteric battle dragons in Ghost Luo City. He didn't believe it was the same as Qin Yu who had reached the peak of the Emperor realm. It was only when he witnessed Qin Yu's attacks and even the immortal sacrificial art that he was certain of Qin Yu's identity. Lin Changqing was about to speak when he caught sight of Su Xiaoya. So he waved his sleeves and disappeared in a flash of green light. No wonder you're so fearless. It turns out that you have such an expert backing you. But after Lin Changqing left with Qin Yu, Su Xiaoya stared blankly for a long time before finally coming to her senses and fleeing into the 100 Beast Palace. Although the 100 Beast Palace had managed to survive today's battle, the 100 Beast Palace had managed to survive. However, if Qin Yu was really involved in the matter of the 2 holy sons under the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's command, the 10,000 Ghost Palace, no, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's bloodline, would never let it go. Therefore, Su Xiaoya immediately left the 100 Martial Realm after arranging the matters of the 100 Beast Palace. If this matter was not handled properly, she might be trapped in the swamp and unable to escape. At this time, Qin Yu and Lin Changqing, who had disappeared from the 100 Beast Palace, appeared in a palace more than 10 regions away. Eldest senior brother, how did you become like this? Little junior brother, did you possess someone? In the ancient palace, Lin Changqing and Qin Yu, who had just appeared, spoke at the same time. My situation is a bit complicated. But little junior brother, what happened to you in the immortal god graveyard? How did you become like this now? Lin Changqing asked. When he first learned that Qin Yu had died, Lin Changqing was extremely shocked. After his master left, the heavenly domain entered its heyday, and there were many Emperor Realm experts. However, Qin Yu's title as the Dragon God Sovereign was definitely the most dazzling Emperor Realm expert. It could even be said that in that era, Qin Yu was invincible in one-on-one battles. This title was obtained by Qin Yu by stepping on the bones of many Emperor Realm experts. No one dared to question it. Therefore, when Lin Changqing learned that Qin Yu had died in the immortal god graveyard, he thought it was just a rumor. It was not until later, when Qin Yu's natal light was extinguished, that he was sure that Qin Yu had really died. However, Lin Changqing could not understand. With Qin Yu's ability, even if he encountered a great crisis, he should be able to escape. Why would he die so thoroughly in the immortal god graveyard? Eldest senior brother, who didn't go to Xing Luo? Qin Yu was a little surprised. Even if the news of him being besieged by Xing Luo and the 12 ancient emperors had not spread in the heavenly domain, Lin Changqing should have gone to look for Xing Luo. I did go to look for Xing Luo, but he disappeared after your accident. He hasn't shown himself since. If it weren't for the fact that his natal flame hasn't been extinguished yet, I would have suspected that he had died. Lin Changqing said. Xing Luo disappeared? He hasn't appeared yet? Qin Yu was startled. This was something that he had never imagined before. That's right. Xing Luo has not appeared since you went to the immortal god graveyard, Lin Changqing said. This was the reason why he wanted to find out what had happened in the immortal god graveyard. After all, Qin Yu's battle strength was unparalleled, and Xing Luo's battle strength was top-notch among the Emperor Realm experts. He really could not think of anything major that could have happened to 2 top-notch Emperor Realm experts. Could it be that Fairy Shuolan has made a move? Just as Qin Yu was getting more and more confused, the dragon's soul spoke. After Xing Luo had joined forces with the 12 ancient emperors to besiege Qin Yu, he had gone to the endless void to pursue the dragon soul. Fortunately, he had been stopped by fairy Xuelon. Therefore, at least Xing Luo had not died in the immortal god graveyard. Qin Yu thought for a while, then briefly told Lin Chongqing about how he had been besieged by Xing Luo. Since Lin Chongqing had already recognized his identity, there was no need to hide it. Xing Luo joined forces with the 12 ancient emperors to set up a death trap against you. Lin Chongqing was stunned, his mouth agape. He knew very well how good the relationship between Qin Yu and Xing Luo was. Both of them were medicine slaves and had supported each other through life and death. They could be said to be as close as brothers. Back then, Qin Yu had succeeded in becoming his master's disciple, but Xing Luo had not been so lucky. Qin Yu and Xing Luo knelt for an entire 9 months without eating or drinking. Only then did they manage to move his master and allow the two of them to become his disciples. Would Xing Luo betray Qin Yu and frame him? Lin Chongqing could not believe it. First senior brother, how did you get these injuries? Qin Yu asked. His first senior brother's cultivation had fallen to the martial progenitor realm, but that was not the main reason. More importantly, the aura of death on his first senior brother's body was crazily devouring his life force. Even though Qin Yu had not carefully inspected his first senior brother's condition, he could vaguely feel that his first senior brother's life force had already been depleted. It was not an exaggeration to say that his first senior brother was a corpse. Chapter 234. I went to the immortal, seeking, ancient road. Hearing Qin Yu's question, Lin Chongqing pondered for a moment and slowly spoke. Immortal, seeking, ancient road? Did something really happen to Master? Qin Yu's heart sank. Other than his master, Qin Yu couldn't think of anything else. What other reason could make his senior brother enter the immortal, seeking, ancient road? One had to know that the immortal, seeking, ancient road was a place that even Qin Yu at his peak did not dare to set foot in. Junior brother, how do you know about this? Have you returned to the sect? Lin Chongqing was startled. He didn't expect Qin Yu to already know that something had happened to his master. No, but I saw someone obtain the inheritance of burying heaven sword immortal. Qin Yu told Lin Chongqing about the sword mark. Lin Chongqing sighed, although he wasn't sure if his master had completely fallen. However, burying heaven sword immortal was an existence that dominated the heaven domain together with his master. Since burying heaven sword immortal's inheritance had been obtained by someone else, his fate could be imagined. His master's situation was probably not optimistic. Next, Lin Chongqing told Qin Yu about his experiences over the years. 300 years after Qin Yu's death, Lin Chongqing completely advanced to the Emperor realm. Not only that, he relied on a special inheritance and a strong foundation to become a top Emperor realm master. However, after 200 years, his master's natal light suddenly dimmed. Lin Chongqing, who had been investigating the cause of Qin Yu's death, immediately returned to the sect. After 100 years, when his master's life flame was only a small flame, the life flame in his master's life flame was only a small flame. Lin Chongqing resolutely stepped into the immortal seeking ancient road. But in the immortal seeking ancient road, he encountered a spatial storm. Lin Chongqing was lucky to not die, but his physical body was completely destroyed, and he survived until his soul took over another body. But his soul source was severely injured, and his vitality gradually dissipated. Until now, he had already turned into a state of walking corpses. Lin Chongqing gave up the chance to reincarnate and used a secret technique to burn his soul source to survive. His purpose was to find Xing Luo. In his entire life, his master had only taken in a total of 4 disciples. He himself was heavily injured, and Qin Yu had fallen in the graveyard of the immortal god. Therefore, Lin Chongqing had no choice but to seek out Star Luo. He wanted Star Luo to go to the immortal seeking ancient road. Lin Chongqing had appeared in the 100 martial realm. It was because he had been searching for the Star Luo clan in countless martial worlds and shattered continents. Eldest senior brother, What exactly is on the immortal-seeking ancient road? After hearing this, Qin Yu was slightly relieved. As long as the life lamp was not extinguished with his master's ability, he should not die so easily. However, even when his master teamed up with the heaven-burying sword immortal to barge into the immortal-seeking ancient road, something still happened. Qin Yu was even more curious and intimidated by the immortal-seeking ancient road. As soon as I entered the immortal-seeking ancient road, I encountered that ancient beast. After a huge battle, I was swept into the spatial storm. Therefore, as for what exactly is in the immortal-seeking ancient road, even I have no idea. Lin Chongqing smiled bitterly. He had long heard about the dangers of the immortal-seeking ancient road. Before entering the immortal-seeking ancient road, he had prepared for 100 years. However, the dangers of the immortal-seeking ancient road far exceeded his expectations. In fact, Lin Chongqing even suspected that the area he had entered was the real immortal-seeking ancient road. Qin Yu's eyes flashed slightly. A teacher for a day, a father for life. Since something had happened to his master in the immortal-seeking ancient road, Qin Yu naturally could not ignore it. Originally, he wanted to get more information about the immortal-seeking ancient road from his eldest senior brother. After returning to the Heaven Domain to find the Star Luo clan, he would go to the immortal-seeking ancient road. But now, it seemed that even if he recovered his cultivation and succeeded in his revenge, he would have to be careful about going to the immortal-seeking ancient road. Lin Chongqing saw Qin Yu's expression and naturally knew what Qin Yu was thinking. This made him feel quite relieved, although he did not know why the Star Luo clan would betray Qin Yu. At the very least, Qin Yu was still the little junior brother in his memory. Nothing had changed. Eldest senior brother, where's second senior sister? After pondering for a while, Qin Yu came back to his senses and asked. His second senior sister was called Ning Qianma, and she was also a brilliant genius. In fact, before Qin Yu obtained the immemorial battle dragon art, his second senior sister had been firmly suppressed by his second senior sister. If his second senior sister knew that something had happened to his master, she would not stand by and do nothing. His senior brother, senior sister, and junior brother were all orphans. Therefore, to them, his master was not as simple as an ordinary master-disciple relationship. Second junior sister is still in closed-door cultivation. I don't know when she will wake up. Lin Chongqing naturally went to look for his second junior sister, but Ning Qianma was not human. Rather than closed-door cultivation, it was more accurate to say that she was in a deep sleep. Once she entered a deep sleep, she would not be disturbed by the outside world. Little junior brother, I remember that the immemorial battle dragon art that you use to cultivate can continuously increase your cultivation as long as you devour dragon blood, right? Lin Chongqing asked after he finished speaking. That's right. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Apart from the dragon soul and Xingluo, he had obtained the immemorial battle dragon art. His master, eldest senior brother, and second senior sister also knew. In fact, it was thanks to the help of his master and the other two that he was able to obtain such a cultivation technique. I know a place where there is a dragon. Lin Chongqing said. Dragon? What's its grade? Qin Yu and the dragon soul's eyes lit up. It's the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon. I have sensed its dragon blood aura before. It should be a heaven-grade dragon. Lin Chongqing said. Heaven-grade dragon. The dragon soul's huge dragon eyes shone brightly. He had just offended the Myriad Ghost Palace and was worried that the martial emperors of the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor would attack. Now, he actually received news of a heaven-grade dragon. This news came at the right time. Qin Yu's eyes also flashed with joy. The dragon race was divided into spiritual, heavenly, sacred, divine, and immortal grades. Although the heaven-grade dragon race was not very powerful, if Qin Yu could obtain it and refine it, his strength would increase by more than a few levels. The golden flame heaven incinerating dragon is in the ancient emperor martial world, one of the 7 major martial worlds. However, it will be troublesome to obtain the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon. Lin Chongqing continued. What kind of trouble? Qin Yu was a little surprised. Although his eldest senior brother's cultivation had fallen to the martial ancestor realm, but in the 7 major martial worlds, he should be invincible. Even if the cultivation of the martial ancestor realm was almost the same, there was still a huge gap between them. But there was also a huge gap in their combat strength. Just like his eldest senior brother and Bailey Xiongwang, the ancient emperor martial world is the only one that is completely unified among the 7 major martial worlds. The force that rules the entire ancient emperor martial world is called the Ancient Emperor Palace. You may not know this force, but you should have heard of the 3 ancient emperors. Lin Changqing said, "Are the 3 ancient emperors related to the ancient emperor martial world?" Qin Yu was shocked. The 3 ancient emperors that his eldest senior brother mentioned were not ordinary martial emperors. Although the primordial age was a long time ago, the 3 ancient emperors were famous for their fighting prowess for many eras. Even now, the 3 ancient martial emperors were still very famous. Chapter 235. Although I don't have accurate information, the 3 ancient emperors are indeed related to the ancient imperial palace. Lin Changqing looked at Qin Yu and nodded slightly. Qin Yu could tell the true intention behind his eldest martial brother's words. He didn't want him to go to the ancient imperial martial world and snatch the golden flame heavenly dragon by force. The 3 great ancient emperors were all famous experts from the ancient era. Since the ancient imperial palace was related to them, they couldn't be treated as an ordinary force. Of course, with Qin Yu's current strength, he couldn't even deal with an ordinary top force. Not to mention the ancient imperial palace that unified all the forces in the martial world. However, I have met the ancient emperor of the ancient imperial palace a few times, and we have some friendship. I can recommend you to join the ancient imperial palace. After saying that, Lin Changqing spoke again. That was why he knew that the golden flame heavenly dragon was in the ancient imperial palace's ancient imperial secret realm. Eldest senior brother, I will think of a way to deal with the golden flame heavenly dragon. As for you, you can't continue to burn your soul origin. Qin Yu looked at Lin Changqing, who looked lifeless and couldn't be suppressed, with a grave expression. Qin Yu had sensed Lin Changqing's condition carefully just now. Burning his soul origin with a secret technique had caused the vitality of this body to be exhausted. If this continued, his physical body would be able to possess another body. However, the soul would be completely destroyed and wouldn't even have a chance to be reincarnated. If Qin Yu was at his peak, he could resolve Lin Changqing's condition with his own cultivation. But now, since I have found you, I will naturally leave the matter of master to you. Lin Changqing smiled. He knew his own condition better than anyone else. Even if he didn't burn his soul origin with a secret technique, he wouldn't be able to turn the situation around. Oh right, eldest senior brother, have you seen Fairy Shualon? After chatting for a while and learning about the ancient imperial palace's situation, Qin Yu thought of Fairy Shualon and asked. Calculating the time, it was about the time when Fairy Shualon left the heavenly dragon continent. It was similar to when Lin Changqing entered the Emperor realm and entered the immortal-seeking ancient road. Fairy Shualon? Fairy Shualon hasn't appeared in the heaven realm since her accident. Lin Changqing pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Lin Changqing naturally knew Qin Yu's only confidant, Fairy Shualon. After learning of Qin Yu's death, he even went to look for Fairy Shualon. Qin Yu fell in a deep thought. Could it be that Fairy Shualon had already left the Qingyun realm? The place where he had rescued Fairy Shualon was an ancient battlefield outside the realm. Although he didn't know anything about Fairy Shualon's background, he could vaguely sense it. Fairy Shualon shouldn't be from the heaven region. This was because Fairy Shualon's cultivation method was completely different from all the orthodoxies in the Qingyun realm. That was a cultivation civilization of a different level in the truest sense. When Qin Yu was taken away by his eldest senior brother, the battle between the Myriad Ghost Palace, the Snow Marquee Residence, and the Sky Crane Valley had spread throughout the 100 Martial Realm. The result of the battle between the 4 sects shocked all the forces in the 100 Martial Realm. The 100 Beast Palace was a mid-tier force. They were actually able to survive the siege of a top force and two mid-tier forces. This was already shocking enough. When the Myriad Ghost Palace and the other two sects joined forces, there were more than 140 martial ancestors. When the news that only 30 or so people survived spread, all the martial artists in the 100 martial realm who heard the news doubted their ears. 140 martial ancestor experts. With such a foundation, even an ordinary top force could be destroyed, especially when a peak 9th cycle martial progenitor realm expert was involved. The 100 Beast Palace had devoured more than 100 martial progenitors at once. Thus, it was hard to believe. However, as the details of the battle spread, the Snow Marquee residents and the Sky Crane Valley disbanded. No matter how unbelievable it was, they could only believe it. Of course, Qin Yu, who had killed almost all the martial ancestors in this battle, was also famous in the 100 martial realm. Countless forces were investigating Qin Yu's background. Even the other martial realms had heard of Qin Yu's name. At this moment, in an ancient palace in the Myriad Ghost Palace. Damn it! Where did that old man come from? Bailey Xionghuang, whose face was pale and his aura was weak, suddenly slapped his chest and spat out a faint blue gas. Bailey Xionghuang's slightly recovered face was extremely ferocious, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. If Lin Chongqing hadn't suddenly appeared at the last moment, no matter what, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to escape from his hands. Now, not only had his foundation been damaged, even Qin Yu had been rescued. It wasn't easy for him to obtain information about the ancient immortal badge, but he missed it just like that. Bailey Xionghuang naturally hated Lin Chongqing to the bone. Squeak. Meanwhile, the door of the palace was opened and a figure came in. It was Gu Tianlang. How is it? Did you find out who that person is? Bailey Xionghuang glanced at Gu Tianlang coldly. His eyes were filled with an eerie, murderous intent, as if he was ready to devour someone at any time, which was quite terrifying. Not yet. Gu Tianlang shook his head. Lin Chongqing, who had mysteriously disappeared with Qin Yu. He had mobilized the forces of the Myriad Ghost Palace. They couldn't find any trace of him, as if he had really appeared out of nowhere. Bailey Xionghuang's face darkened after hearing this. This time, they had gone to the 100 Beast Palace with such a huge force. To their surprise, they had failed miserably and returned in a sorry state, completely humiliating themselves. More importantly, up until now, they still didn't know the background of Lin Chongqing, who dared to go against them. Third senior brother, should we tell the Sacred Island about this? Gu Tianling glanced at Bailey Xionghuang's expression and asked carefully. Although only the two of them knew that Qin Yu had received the inheritance of the first saint and the seventh saint. But paper couldn't wrap the fire. Sooner or later, the Sacred Island would know about this. If the Sacred Island got the news in person, they would be in much more trouble than they were now. Bailey Xionghuang's face darkened after hearing this. If it weren't for Lin Chongqing, even if Qin Yu ran away, he could still catch him. But Lin Chongqing's existence was very troublesome. As long as Lin Chongqing was there, even if they found Qin Yu's whereabouts, it was basically impossible to catch Qin Yu. The Battle of the 100 Beast Palace made Bailey Xionghuang realize the gap between him and Lin Chongqing. Tell this news to Master first. After thinking for a while, Bailey Xionghuang said slowly, there were countless experts in the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor's branch. Although they were all led by the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor, they naturally formed countless branch groups. Gu Tianling thought for a while and understood what Bailey Xionghuang meant. The matter of the ancient immortal badge was very important. If the news was sent to the Sacred Island, maybe even the Ghost Emperor would be alarmed, and countless top experts would be drawn out. But if they only told their master, the credit would go to their branch when they found the ancient immortal badge. No matter how strong the one-armed Lin Chongqing was, it was impossible for him to fight against a real martial emperor. Chapter 236. What about the 100 Beast Palace? Gu Tianlang asked tentatively. Naturally, his target wasn't the 100 Beast Palace, which had already been emptied of thousands of demon beasts. His target was Su Xiaoye, who had the 9-star divine body. His primordial heavenly wolf soul and Su Xiaoye's 9-star divine body were a perfect match for each other. If the two were combined, it would be much easier to cultivate. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoye had no feelings for him. It was the same, even though they were in the same martial world. Su Xiaoye has returned to the Sky region. Let's forget about the 100 Beast Palace. Bailey Xionghuang glanced at Gu Tianlang. The 100-year agreement between the martial emperors was not over yet. Gu Tianlang dared to attack Su Xiaoye for personal gain. Fortunately, Su Xiaoye was involved in Qin Yu's matter this time. Otherwise, Gu Tianlang would be in big trouble when Su Xiaoye returned to the Sky region. It was also because Su Xiaoye had returned to the Sky region. Bailey Xionghuang had no intention of hiding Qin Yu's matter. Gu Tianlang was unwilling to give up, but he had to give up. After all, even if he destroyed the 100 Beast Palace now, he would not be able to capture Su Xiaoye. 7 days later, in the ancient imperial martial world, after changing his appearance, Qin Yu arrived before a vast and glorious ancient city filled with spiritual energy that was like mist. That ancient city was the ancient imperial city under the jurisdiction of the ancient imperial palace. Whoosh! Not long after, the void rippled, and a figure appeared. It was Lin Chongqing. Qin Yu had arranged for his parents and the Qins to stay behind Long Hao's Sumeru realm. Lin Chongqing had brought him to the ancient imperial city. 3 days ago, the ancient imperial palace recruited disciples, which was held once every 10 years. Today, the ancient imperial palace would hold a second round of selection for countless geniuses. The ancient imperial palace was a sacred place for the forces in the ancient imperial martial world. All the geniuses were proud to be able to enter the ancient imperial palace. However, that was in the past. According to his eldest senior brother, the ancient imperial martial world was in a turbulent period. This was because the ancient emperor was old and his life was coming to an end. There were many top experts in the ancient imperial palace. However, to be able to suppress all the king palaces in the ancient imperial martial world and become the new ancient emperor. However, he never appeared. This caused the ancient imperial palace to constantly have internal strife. Because of this, there were many powerful Wangs in the ancient imperial martial world. All of them had clearly become restless and were even secretly trying to rope in their opponents. The law of the jungle was the same everywhere. In the past, when the ancient imperial martial world was strong enough, those Wangfu forces could only submit. But now, the ancient emperor was old, and the ancient emperor hall was filled with infighting. There were even signs of separation. Those powerful king mansions naturally wouldn't be willing to be suppressed by the ancient imperial hall. Therefore, on the surface, the ancient imperial hall was still the leader of the ancient imperial martial world. But in reality, the situation was already unstable, and it could turn into a complete mess at any time. This was the reason why Lin Chongqing had asked Qin Yu to come to the ancient imperial martial world. The ancient imperial martial world had the golden flame heaven-incinerating dragon, a heaven-ranked dragon. Another goal was to have Qin Yu subdue the ancient imperial hall. Since Qin Yu had obtained the ancient immortal token, the treasure of the heaven-suppressing ghost emperor, the myriad ghost palace definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. As for the heavenly demon cult, Mo Changsheng obviously wouldn't let the ancient demon seal go either. Therefore, if Qin Yu could become the emperor of the ancient imperial hall, it would be the best cover for his identity. More importantly, if he could control the power of the ancient imperial martial world. As long as the martial emperors didn't come, no force in the 7 major martial worlds could deal with Qin Yu. To Qin Yu, who is in the process of recovering his power, this is an exceptionally good opportunity. Junior brother, I'll take my leave first. If there's anything, let me know. After handing the token for the semi-finals to Qin Yu, Lin Chongqing didn't stay any longer. He turned around and left. In the battle of the 100 Beast Palace, he had only made 2 simple moves. But the burden on his body wasn't small. He had to go into seclusion to recuperate. Take care. After watching Lin Chongqing leave, Qin Yu's figure flashed and flew toward the ancient imperial city. The ancient imperial hall can unify the entire ancient imperial martial world without a strong backer in the three great imperial regions and heavenly regions. It's obvious that they are strong. If I can subdue them and nurture them, they will definitely be a great help in the future. The Dragon Soul in the ancient Dragon Seal agreed with Lin Chongqing's suggestion to subdue the ancient imperial hall. Although the ancient imperial hall didn't have a martial emperor, they still had great potential if they were nurtured well. With Qin Yu's alchemy skills, he could definitely nurture a super force. A lone rogue cultivator and someone with a powerful background were two completely different existences. Take Qin Yu, for example. In his previous life, he was unparalleled in combat strength and was invincible in one-on-one battles. But when he was in a desperate situation and was besieged, he was too weak. Back in the battle of the Immortal God Graveyard, Qin Yu fell under the joint attack of the Star Luo and the 12 Ancient Emperors. But the Star Luo and the 12 Ancient Emperors weren't the only ones who participated in that battle. Although the Star Luo didn't establish a force, Ancient Emperors like the heaven-suppressing Ghost Emperor had gathered many Emperor Realm Masters under their command. No matter how strong Qin Yu was, once he was trapped, he wouldn't be able to fight against dozens of people. The forces of the 7 great martial realms are too weak. Instead of nurturing such a force, it's better to imitate the Dragon Emperor and establish the Eternal Dragon Nation. Qin Yu shook his head slightly. If he could subdue the top forces of the Heaven Domain, it would naturally be good. But Qin Yu wasn't interested in the ancient Imperial Hall and the other forces of the 7 great martial realms. Of course, Qin Yu naturally wouldn't repeat the same mistakes he had suffered in his previous life. Therefore, Qin Yu had the idea of establishing the Eternal Dragon Nation a long time ago. Imagine the scene of tens of thousands of dragons following the battle. How unparalleled would it be? Establishing the Eternal Dragon Nation? You don't plan to condense the Origin Dragon Seal? The Dragon Soul couldn't help but ask. Although the immemorial battle dragon art could devour dragon blood and obtain the divine powers of the Dragon Clan, but that required the condensation of the Origin Dragon Seal. In other words, Qin Yu was using the immemorial battle dragon art to forcefully seize the divine powers of the Dragon Clan. From there, he could condense the Dragon Seal for his own use. Because of that, once the divine powers of the Dragon Clan were seized, their battle strength would be greatly reduced, and they might even die. If Qin Yu wanted to establish the Eternal Dragon Nation, he naturally couldn't condense the Dragon Origin Dragon Seal. In that case, the disadvantages seemed to outweigh the advantages. One had to know that Qin Yu's title of Dragon God Emperor in his previous life was because he had mastered tens of thousands of divine powers of the Dragon Clan. And if he didn't have enough battle strength, even if he established the Eternal Dragon Nation, he wouldn't be able to suppress the Dragon Clan. As long as I leave the Origin Dragon Seal in the Dragon Clan's body. Qin Yu naturally had his own considerations in this regard. With the Origin Dragon Seal, Qin Yu could completely control the Dragon Clan. If the Dragon Clan was dissatisfied, he could suppress them. If they wanted to rebel, he could also directly take back the Origin Dragon Seal. Of course, Qin Yu had another concern when he wanted to establish the Origin Dragon Nation. That was the Origin Dragon Seal that had disappeared for some reason in his previous life. The Origin Dragon Seal had merged with his soul, and his soul's memories had returned. However, the Origin Dragon Seal had disappeared without a trace. This was something that Qin Yu couldn't figure out, and he was very concerned about it. While Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were talking, they had already entered the ancient imperial city. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter the venue of the semi-finals. However, when Qin Yu approached the location of the second round, 2 guards with auras as vast as the ocean stopped him. The 2 guards in heavy armor were both half-martial progenitors. Chapter 237. A half-step martial ancestor could be considered a powerful elder in the 100 martial realms peak forces. After all, it wouldn't be difficult for a half-step martial ancestor to reach the martial ancestor realm in the future. But in the ancient imperial martial realm, such a person was only a guard in charge of the semifinals. The ancient imperial palace had a strong foundation. Qin Yu gave the two half-step martial progenitors his title plate for the second round. After verifying it, he arrived at the location of the second round. The extremely spacious plaza, which could accommodate tens of thousands of people, was already filled with people at this moment. The ancient imperial palace only recruited disciples once every 10 years. Even after the strict preliminaries, there were still tens of thousands of geniuses who made it to the semifinals. The semifinals were split into two segments. The first was the aptitude test, and the second was the battle strength test. Although the preliminaries 3 days ago were also extremely harsh, it could be said that a lot of luck played a role in it. Therefore, the two segments of the test today would eliminate all geniuses. Only the true geniuses would be left. 100 feet away from the square, there was a huge crowd of spectators. They were martial progenitors from various major forces in the ancient imperial martial world, and they were the overlords of their respective regions. But at this moment, they could only watch from afar with the ordinary cultivators. No matter how turbulent the ancient imperial palace was, no one dared to go against them at this moment. Qin Yu stood at the edge of the square, ignoring the dazzling, excited, and nervous geniuses around him. He was thinking about how he could enter the ancient imperial palace's secret realm. According to his first senior brother, the ancient emperor's secret realm was closely related to the succession of the ancient emperor. It was even possible that the ancient emperor's secret realm had secrets related to the three ancient emperors. Therefore, not everyone could enter the ancient emperor's secret realm. Even the martial ancestor realm elders of the ancient imperial palace could only enter the ancient emperor's secret realm. Even if Qin Yu passed the semifinals and entered the ancient imperial palace. But it wouldn't be easy for him to enter the ancient emperor's secret realm. Dawn! Dawn! At noon, the sun shone brightly in the sky. 3 long bell tolls resounded throughout the ancient city. The spectators and geniuses that were clamoring in the semi-finals immediately fell silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Sizzle! Sizzle! A dazzling light appeared in the sky above the ancient imperial city's core palace. The light descended from above and transformed into an ancient door of light. An incomparably vast aura was emitted from the door of light. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. In front of that vast might, they felt as weak as ants. The ancient imperial palace has finally appeared. Through the ancient door of light, one could see an ancient palace the size of an island floating quietly in the void. The ancient imperial palace. The ancient imperial palace's secret realm. The ancient imperial palace's secret realm. The ancient imperial hall was located within the boundaries of the ancient imperial city. However, they were located in the Sumeru realm and were rarely seen. It's a world within a world. A hint of surprise flashed through Qin Yu's eyes. From the ancient imperial palace's Sumeru realm, he could sense a fluctuation of the Sumeru realm. They had the means to create another Sumeru realm within the Sumeru realm. Martial's ancient est. Of Martial, the ancient imperial hall had probably produced a top-notch martial emperor in the past. The rules of the martial progenitor realm and the martial monarch realm were two different forces. Regardless of how strong a martial progenitor's cultivation was, it was impossible for him to comprehend the martial Tao. There's indeed the golden flame, heaven-scorching dragon. The eyes of the dragon's soul, which was using a secret technique to sense the situation, flickered with joy. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that instant, 3 figures with shocking auras flew out from the ancient light gate and stood above the square. They were 3 martial progenitors in blue robes. Their cultivations were at the 5th layer martial progenitor realm. Following the 3 martial progenitors, more than 10 martial progenitors in white robes appeared. However, their cultivations were all below the 3rd layer martial progenitor realm. In the ancient imperial palace, where the hierarchy was strict, even those who had reached the martial progenitor realm had a clear hierarchy. It was even more so for the disciples of the martial god realm. Today is the day of the semifinals. Those who are able to pass the first 2 rounds will officially become a disciple of the ancient imperial palace and enjoy great glory. I believe you all know the rules of the semifinals. I'll get straight to the point. Now, the first round of the semifinals, the test of talents. Among the 3 blue-robed martial progenitors, a plump man stepped forward and flicked his finger. 10 rays of light descended from the sky and landed in front of the square. The 10 rays of light were 10 steels that were around a zhang tall. The steels were surrounded by ancient runes and emitted a magnificent aura. The 10 steels were able to test one's martial Dao talent. In order to pass the test, one would need to possess a top-tier innate spiritual vein. That being said, even those with a top-tier innate spiritual vein would not necessarily be able to enter the ancient imperial palace. It would be shocking if 1,000 of them were able to become a disciple of the ancient imperial palace. Soon, under the arrangements of the white-robed martial progenitors, the geniuses who were taking part in the semifinals went forward in an orderly manner to have their talents tested. The 10 steels were able to test one's bloodline, spiritual vein, spiritual flesh, etc. Innate spiritual vein, lower grade 7. Disqualified. Innate spiritual vein, upper grade 6. Disqualified. Innate saint vein, middle grade 1. Disqualified. Innate saint vein, upper grade 4. Disqualified. As the steels glowed, the talents of the semifinals were tested one by one. Those who were lucky enough to pass the preliminaries were eliminated one after another. Their hopes of getting lucky were shattered. Boom! Suddenly, a blue light pillar that was 100 zhang tall shot up into the sky. A terrifying chill filled the area within a radius of 1,000 miles, and all living beings felt a piercing pain on their skin from the cold. Innate saint body, peak grade 8. Everyone looked over. In front of the 7th steel, a handsome young man in an icy blue robe withdrew his right hand, which was surrounded by cold air, with a smile on his face. Although there was no clear difference in strength between a bloodline and a spiritual vein, the potential of a spiritual body was higher than that of a bloodline and a spiritual vein. Only those extremely powerful bloodline powers of the ancestors, as well as heaven-defying spirit veins, would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with spirit bodies. Not only did the young man in the icy blue robe have a spiritual body, but he also had a peak grade 8 innate saint body. With such a talent, even in the 7 major martial worlds, he would be a peerless genius standing at the peak. That's the symbol of the Black Ice Martial Mansion. I recognize him. He's the young prince of the Black Ice Martial Mansion. No wonder his talent is so terrifying. He's the young prince of one of the 5 major mansions. Discussions and exclamations could be heard in the square. However, among the spectating cultivators, the martial progenitors from the various major powers had different expressions on their faces. The 5 major mansions were the most powerful forces in the ancient imperial martial world, except for the ancient imperial palace. The undercurrents and storms in the ancient imperial martial world were caused by the 5 major mansions. At this time, the Black Ice Martial Mansion had actually allowed the young prince, who had such amazing talent, to participate in the ancient imperial palace's disciple assessment. This made them ponder deeply. They could not figure out the Black Ice Martial Mansion's intention. Chapter 238. Li Tianxian. Inside the ancient door of light, there were 2 figures observing the young man in an icy blue robe. The 2 of them were a man and a woman, both of whom were about 17 or 18 years old. The man was wearing a martial arts robe. He had a muscular body, and his eyes were like lightning. The woman was wearing a snow-white robe and carried an ancient sword on her back. Her eyes were cold, and there was a murderous aura around her. The man and woman were the descendants of the ancient emperor, Chun Jiuxing and Chun Zilian. The 2 of them were more talented than their peers in the younger generation of the ancient imperial palace. Even in the 7 great martial worlds, it was hard to find someone of the same age as them. It's not just the Black Ice Martial Mansion. The other martial mansions have sent their geniuses as well. With his arms crossed, Chun Jiuxing swept his gaze across the crowd in the square. It seemed like the rumors were true. A few of the top 5 martial mansions had sent their geniuses to participate in the semifinals. They must have infiltrated the higher-ups of the ancient imperial palace. Chun Zilian's eyes were cold. The ancient imperial palace was at a critical moment. The top 5 martial mansions had sent their geniuses to participate in the ancient imperial palace. They must have received some insider information. The position of the ancient emperor and the inheritance of our ancestors must not fall into the hands of others. Chun Jiuxing said resolutely. He naturally knew what the top 5 martial mansions were up to. No matter what, he would not allow the top 5 martial mansions to succeed. Boom! While the tens of thousands of examinees and countless onlookers were discussing, another pillar of light shot into the sky. The golden light was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. It was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. Another innate sacred body. The martial ancestor of the martial forces could not hide his shock. The innate sacred body had also reached the 8th grade. Although it was only at the advanced 8th grade, it was weaker than Li Tianxian. However, this level of aptitude was enough to shock everyone. Those with the top sacred bloodline were considered to have great potential in the ancient imperial martial world. Needless to say, those with the 8th grade sacred body would have great potential. They would at least reach the martial ancestor realm in the future. If they were lucky enough, they might even be able to reach the martial emperor realm. The 3rd prince of the celestial martial mansion, Zhao Junhai. A martial progenitor recognized the young man with the sacred flesh surrounded by a golden glow. The celestial martial king manor was also one of the 5 great king mansions in the ancient imperial martial world. Zhao Junhai, who was surrounded by geniuses, looked at Li Tianxian with a cold smile. Li Tianxian coldly snorted as killing intent flickered in his eyes. They were aware of the other party's intentions for participating in the ancient imperial hall's test. If they had the opportunity, they would definitely not mind eliminating him. Boom! While Li Tianxian and Zhao Junhai were facing off against each other, killing intent flashed across their faces. An incomparably sharp sword intent raged through the heavens and the earth like a flood. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the geniuses in the square or the surrounding martial artists, the treasured sword on his body automatically vibrated. It was as if it wanted to rush out of its scabbard. This is the innate sword body. It was Chun Zilian, dressed in snow-white clothes and carrying an ancient sword on her back. Shock flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes as he looked at the figure in front of the first spirit pattern tablet and the vast sword might. The Scarlet Sun Martial Imperial Mansion actually produced a genius with an innate sword body. Both Li Tianxian and Zhao Junhai were shocked. The person with the soaring sword intent was Zhou Yunlang from the Scarlet Sun Martial Imperial Mansion, one of the 5 Imperial Mansions. Not only did Zhou Yunlang have an innate saint body, but he also had an extremely rare sword body. He was a sword cultivator at the innate realm. In the history of the ancient imperial martial world, there had been an expert with an innate sword body. He had never been defeated by someone of the same level as him and was used to fighting someone of a higher level. Later on, he had broken through the martial progenitor realm and reached the martial emperor realm. He had crossed the 3 imperial realms and entered the heavenly domain. He was the most legendary figure in the history of the ancient imperial martial world. Li Tianxian and Zhao Junhai had extraordinary talents. However, they still felt pressured when facing Zhou Yunlang, who had an innate sword body. The test continued. Nearly 3,000 of the tens of thousands of geniuses had been eliminated. All kinds of geniuses with outstanding bloodlines, spiritual meridians, and spiritual bodies appeared. However, Li Tianxian, Zhao Junhai, and Zhou Yunlang, who had an 8th grade saint body and an innate sword body, stood out. The other geniuses' talents paled in comparison. Everyone in the square focused their attention on the 3 of them. The 3 kings' palaces had sent out such talented geniuses to participate in the ancient imperial palace's test. This made the people from the major forces wonder what the 5 kings' palaces were up to. Even a divine, innate sword body didn't trigger the ancient emperor's legacy holy seal. No wonder Senior Brother said that we can't hide our talents during the test. Looking at the geniuses who had gone up to take the test, were eliminated, or passed the test, Zhou Yunlang was stunned. He glanced at Zhou Yunlang. Qin Yu's eyes flickered. His senior brother had said that the ancient imperial palace's test could trigger the ancient emperor's secret dimension's legacy holy seal. If it could be triggered, it would be of great help to Qin Yu in the ancient imperial palace and the ancient emperor's secret dimension. However, it seemed that the ancient emperor's legacy holy seal wouldn't be triggered so easily. Fortunately, Qin Yu was quite confident in his own aptitude. Thus, he was not worried. For hours later, it was Qin Yu's turn. It should be him. Grandfather asked us to observe him. When Qin Yu stepped forward, Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian looked at Qin Yu. The reason why they were here was not because they were bored enough to come and observe the semifinals. LV2 Martial God Realm? Isn't his cultivation a little too weak? Chen Jiuxing raised his eyebrows. He had thought that Qin Yu was someone who could make his grandfather specially mention. At the very least, he would be at the same level as Zhou Yunlang and the others. However, he didn't expect him to be a LV2 Martial God Realm martial artist. Maybe his talents are amazing. Let's take a look first. Chen Zilian was also a little surprised. However, since her grandfather had paid attention to him, he shouldn't be an ordinary person. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian didn't know. If Qin Yu hadn't had a breakthrough in his cultivation in the ancient dragon seal, he wouldn't have been able to do so. His current cultivation was only at LV1 Martial God Realm. Rumble. As Qin Yu touched the spiritual rune tablet, the deep yellow dragon vein and the 27-branched dragon veins in his body began to glow. A rare phenomenon of lightning and thunder appeared in the sky above the Dragon Emperor city. The sky within 10,000 li was covered in dark clouds with flickering lightning. They could even vaguely see Shenron soaring in the sky with a magnificent aura. The crowd was astounded, as if an ancient, peerless expert had arrived. What is this? Zhou Yunlang, Li Tianxian, and Zhao Junhai wore blank expressions. A rare phenomenon. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian stared blankly at him. God flesh. The 3 purple-robed martial progenitors and the martial progenitors of the formidable factions were astounded too. This year was truly a gathering of geniuses. Not only were there 3 outstanding sacred flesh that only appeared once in 100 years, and now there was a peerless genius with a god flesh too. How could they not be astounded? At that instant, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were startled as they sensed something. Chapter 239. Has the inheritance been triggered? Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul tilted their heads and looked at the ancient light gate. When the heaven and earth vision had appeared during the test, they could clearly feel an ancient ripple in the Sumeru world. Although it had only appeared for a moment, the ripple should have come from the world within a world. Divine body aptitude, but he is only at LV2 Martial God Realm. Zhou Yunlang, who was surrounded by surging sword essence, had a strange look in his eyes. From Qin Yu's cultivation, he could tell that Qin Yu was a rogue cultivator. Otherwise, with his divine body aptitude, he would not be so weak if he was nurtured by a force. The stronger one's physical body aptitude was, the deeper one's understanding of the laws of heaven and earth would be. It would not be an exaggeration to say that one's physical body aptitude would improve by leaps and bounds. If we can't subdue this kid, Li Tianxian from the Black Ice Martial Mansion and Zhao Junhai from the Heavenly Martial Mansion also had different expressions. Zhou Yunlang, who had an innate sword body, only made them feel pressured. However, Qin Yu's divine body aptitude was enough for them to take him seriously. If they could not subdue Qin Yu, they had to get rid of him. Otherwise, it would definitely have a huge impact on their plans. No wonder grandfather paid attention to him. I didn't expect him to have a divine body. Chen Jiuxing and Chun Zillion came back to their senses and stared at Qin Yu in shock. Although sacred bodies were rare in the ancient imperial martial world, they would occasionally appear. This year, there were even a few of them. However, no one with a divine body had appeared in the ancient imperial martial world for close to 1,000 years. Was the ancient imperial palace going to have a change in luck? At this moment, in an ancient palace surrounded by colorful lights and auspicious beasts, a figure shrouded in multicolored light, whose face could not be seen clearly, slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky, and it seemed as though there were stars in the sky. This person was the ancient emperor of the ancient imperial palace. There was a fist-sized stone statue in front of the ancient emperor. The stone statue was surrounded by golden patterns, and it emitted a solemn and profound golden light. The ancient emperor tilted his head slightly. His eyes, which were as deep as the stars, looked out of the hall, as though they could pierce through the void. In the next moment, Qin Yu's figure appeared in his eyes. This is the legacy of the Emperor of the Ancients. In the other palaces of the ancient imperial palace, many figures with frightening auras were awakened and looked toward the palace where the ancient emperor was. They could sense the unique energy fluctuations emanating from the golden stone statue. Within the ancient imperial palace, there were 3 stone statues of the ancient emperors. Every ancient emperor had to obtain the recognition of an ancient emperor's inheritance before succeeding the throne. The reason why the ancient imperial hall was in such a state right now was because the ancient emperor had reached the end of his life. However, none of the top experts in the ancient imperial hall were able to trigger the inheritance of the 3 ancient emperors. As a result, the new emperor of the ancients had yet to be decided. Who would have thought that the ancient emperor's inheritance would be activated at this moment? They appeared in the sky above the ancient imperial city. He glanced at the dissipating heavenly lightning anomaly. Their gazes landed on the tall and straight figure of Qin Yu, who was dressed in black. It seems that many big shots from the ancient imperial hall have been attracted. Within the ancient dragon seal, the dragon soul sized up the expert from the ancient imperial hall. Their cultivation was at the 8th or 9th rank martial ancestor realm. Just this group of martial ancestor realm experts alone was enough to crush the myriad ghost palace. Qin Yu was not surprised by this. Since the ancient imperial hall was able to suppress countless forces in the ancient imperial martial world and become the most powerful overlord of the ancient imperial martial world, naturally, they had to be strong enough to suppress the other top forces in the ancient imperial martial world. Qin Yu retracted his right hand, and the dragon veins in his body went silent. Although the spiritual rune steel tested his divine body aptitude, Qin Yu knew that his aptitude was only that of a top sacred body. It was only because the 27 branch dragon veins had increased his cultivation speed by 27 times. That was why Qin Yu's aptitude was so close to the divine body. And after Qin Yu displayed his divine body aptitude, around the square, the hot topic of the spectators turned to Qin Yu. There were already many powers that had gone to investigate Qin Yu's origin. The appearance of a peerless genius with divine body aptitude would definitely shock the 7 great martial worlds. The originally weak ancient imperial hall might even become strong again because of this. To some forces in the ancient imperial martial world, this was not a situation that they wanted to see. The martial Tao aptitude test was still ongoing. In the past, as long as one had a top spiritual vein, they would be able to pass the aptitude test. But this time, the weakest one had to have a sacred vein to pass the test. Even so, out of the tens of thousands of geniuses in the semifinals, there were still about 9,000 left. After all, the ancient imperial hall only recruited disciples once every 10 years. The number of geniuses gathered was naturally shocking. Zhao Junhai of the celestial martial manor. How should I address you? After the martial Tao aptitude test ended, a voice sounded in Qin Yu's ears. It was Zhao Junhai, who was surrounded by a group of geniuses. Shenfeng. Since Qin Yu was here in disguise, his name was naturally fake as well. His name was taken from his parents, each of which had a character. So it's Brother Shinfeng. May I know where Brother Shinfeng is from? Who is your master? With a smile on his face, Zhao Junhai inquires about Qin Yu's details. Li Tianxian, who was gradually approaching, also pricked up his ears. He was curious about Qin Yu's background. I have no family or master. I'm just a rogue cultivator, Qin Yu said indifferently. Brother Shinfeng has a divine body. In the future, your name will definitely shake the 7 great worlds and even the sovereign domain. Zhao Junhai's eyes lit up, and the smile on his face grew wider. Yeah, Qin Yu nodded indifferently. The smile on Zhao Junhai's face froze. Damn it. Under normal circumstances, one should be polite when being complimented. Qin Yu only nodded like that. How was he supposed to continue? Fortunately, Zhao Junhai was not an ordinary person. He immediately regained his composure and continued speaking. Brother Shinfeng, with your current divine body, you will definitely be targeted in the combat segment. You are only a LV2 martial god. Once you are targeted, you will be eliminated immediately. So, if you need help, I can guarantee that you will pass the combat segment safely. With the foundation of the Celestial Martial Mansion, it will be easy for us to let anyone pass or eliminate anyone. Zhao Junhai's last words were laced with a faint threat. No need. Qin Yu rejected Zhao Junhai's offer as though he did not understand what Zhao Junhai meant. Zhao Junhai's eyes dimmed, and anger rose in his heart. He was the crown prince of one of the top 5 marquee mansions, and he had a top sacred body. Even though Qin Yu possessed the aptitude of a divine body, his reaction was truly a bit too condescending. Kid, you have to think carefully. Don't think that you will be able to enter the ancient imperial palace just because you have a divine body. LV8 martial god beside, Zhao Junhai immediately jumped out when he saw what had happened. Qin Yu did not want to waste his breath on him. A mere crown prince of the martial imperial manor was nothing in his eyes. Good, very good. Killing intent flashed across Zhao Junhai's eyes. Since Qin Yu did not know what was good for him, he might affect their plan. Then, he could not blame them for being ruthless. Chapter 240. Not long after Zhao Junhai and the others left, Li Tianxian also sent people from the Black Ice Martial Mansion. They wanted to capture Qin Yu and use him for their own purposes. In the end, they were rejected by Qin Yu. Like Zhao Junhai and the others, Li Tianxian and the others also wanted to kill Qin Yu. Zhou Yunlang from the Scarlet Sun Martial Mansion was confident in his own strength. Or did he not send people to contact Qin Yu because he saw Zhao Junhai and Li Tianxian suffer? Even so, Qin Yu had already offended 2 top martial mansions before he even entered the ancient imperial palace. However, Qin Yu did not care about this at all. He did not know why Zhao Junhai and Li Tianxian wanted to recruit him. However, they were just 2 princes. He did not care if he offended them. What he was thinking about now was how to enter the ancient emperor's secret dimension. His aptitude test should have triggered the ancient emperor's inheritance. However, whether he could enter the ancient emperor's secret dimension was another matter. After resting for an hour, it was time for the combat test. The 3 martial ancestor realm elders of the ancient imperial palace worked together to take out an ancient Tao diagram. The Tao diagram was only 10 feet wide. It floated in the air and emitted a dazzling light. There were countless Tao inscriptions on the Tao diagram. The entire Tao diagram was divided into palm-sized light mirror regions. The scene in each light mirror region was different. Moreover, those scenes were not inanimate objects. They looked like real worlds. 100 Worlds diagram. A martial progenitor could not help but exclaim when he saw the ancient Tao pattern. The 100 Worlds diagram was an important treasure of the ancient imperial palace. The Tao diagram used the Tao of space to open up hundreds of independent spaces. Each of the light mirror regions was an independent space, refining the hundreds of independent spaces into the Tao diagram. Even as a martial progenitor, he could not help but exclaim in astonishment upon seeing this. Who would have thought that the ancient imperial palace would change the way they fought in the combat test? Instead, they took out the 100 Worlds diagram and used it as a battlefield for the semifinals. All of you will enter the 100 Worlds picture. Only the strongest geniuses of your respective worlds will be able to enter the ancient Imperial Palace. As expected, the ancient Imperial Hall wanted to send the 9,000 geniuses who had passed the aptitude test into the 100 Worlds diagram. Only the most elite and outstanding 1,000 people would be left behind, and even a small number of geniuses would be left behind. TSK, he actually changed his method. Li Tianxian and Zhao Juanhai's eyes darkened slightly. This way, they would not be able to use the test to eliminate Qin Yu, unless he could enter the same independent space as Qin Yu. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the three purple-robed martial progenitors performed hand seals, the rules of the heavens and earth began to surge. On the 100 Worlds diagram, the 100 mirrors shone with dazzling light. In the next moment, all the prodigies in the square were sucked into the 100 Worlds picture. Qin Yu is standing in midair with the sound of wind whistling in his ears. He revolves the elemental energy in his body. When Qin Yu looked up, he discovered that he was in a lush mountain range. The mountain range stretched for tens of thousands of miles. Ancient trees towered into the sky and were extremely lush. In the mountain range, there was a shocking demonic aura that swept out. Qin Yu even sensed a few demonic auras that were close to the martial progenitor realm. Clearly, this ancient mountain range was not a safe place. Qin Yu used his soul perception to enter the mountain range and disappeared without a trace. There were close to 9,000 people scattered in the 100 Worlds picture. There were close to 90 people in each space. This was a test where even the most powerful experts could be eliminated. Unless they had extraordinary battle strength that could fight against 100 people alone, they would not be able to do anything. At this moment, in the sky above the ancient imperial city, the 100 Worlds picture, which was originally only 10 feet wide, had now become 10,000 feet wide and hung in the sky. Every scene in the light mirror world map could be seen clearly. The most outstanding geniuses have been sent away. It seems like the ancient Imperial Hall is secretly manipulating this. I wonder how many geniuses will be able to enter the ancient Imperial Hall this year. Outside the square, the spectating experts, as well as the eliminated geniuses, were all gathered to watch. Among the geniuses recruited by the ancient Imperial Hall in the past, all of them were dazzling. As long as they did not die, they would become famous experts in the ancient Imperial martial world. The current lords of the ancient Imperial martial world were also dazzling geniuses who had participated in the test in the past. Look, the eliminated geniuses are starting to appear. It's Li Tianxian. Zhao Junhai has also met his match. As expected, the geniuses from the 5 great royal palaces have extraordinary battle strength. As the geniuses in the 100 Worlds moved, battles broke out one after another. The spectating cultivators outside the square began to discuss. Sizzle, sizzle. In a flaming volcano, Li Tianquan's body was surrounded by cold air as he stepped on the ground. A layer of dark blue ice condensed and spread out. As ice and fire intersected, a large amount of boiling steam appeared in the volcano and filled the void. Crack! 2 young men, who were wearing the same clothes and seemed to be from the same sect, appeared. As soon as they saw Li Tianxian, they were frozen by a layer of dark blue ice and turned into ice sculptures. The 2 level 8 martial god realm geniuses were instantly killed. Li Tianquan's dark blue ice wasn't an ordinary ice energy. It was the unique dark ice attribute of the Black Ice Martial Royal Palace, and its power was shocking. Li Tianxian didn't even look at the 2 as he walked away. After Li Tianxian left, 2 beams of light descended from the sky and sent the 2 away. Boom! In a desolate wasteland filled with strange rocks, a deafening explosion sounded. The powerful ultimacy of heaven and earth exploded as a dazzling golden light spread out. The 3 martial god realm geniuses who had teamed up were sent flying and vomited blood. Their auras were extremely weak. Zhao Junhai, who was surrounded by a dense golden light, strode away as the metal ultimacy of heaven and earth surged. Rip. In an ancient palace, the sound of air being torn apart could be heard as a violent sword intent spread out. A ferocious beast with a peak martial god realm cultivation turned into a bloody mist and dissipated. Zhou Yunlang kept his sword and left calmly. He had an innate sword body, and almost no one in the same realm could be his match. No one could stop him if he wanted to take first place in this batch of new disciples. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 5 figures appeared in the lush, ancient forest and scattered in 5 different directions. A figure was besieged by the 5 of them. Kid, since we've bumped into you, you can only blame yourself for being unlucky. The 5 of them looked at Qin Yu, who was under Kuin's control, and sneered. They were the geniuses of the heavenly martial royal palace. When they entered the 100 Worlds picture, they had received Zhao Juanhai's instructions to kill Qin Yu if they bumped into him. You're the ones who are unlucky. Qin Yu's eyes were indifferent, and there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in them. As soon as Qin Yu finished speaking, his body flashed, and he immediately pounced on the 5 of them. You overestimate yourself. Kill him. The 5 of them looked ferocious as their killing intent surged. The ultimacy of heaven and earth shook and turned into a destructive attack. Rumble. A deafening and intense battle resounded in the ancient forest. Countless towering ancient trees were destroyed. However, after a few breaths of time, the battle ended. Qin Yu flew away. 5 bloody corpses could be seen on the ground of the ruins. Chapter 241. No way. 5 LV6 martial gods were killed in a few breaths' time. Did he hide his true cultivation level? That must be it. I was wondering why his divine body was only at LV2 martial god realm. Pretending to be weak? That's cunning. Outside the 100 Worlds picture, many onlookers were shocked when they saw the 5 dead geniuses. Although they did not see the battle, it had ended in a short time. That was enough to show how terrifying Qin Yu's combat strength was. Many people who had seen the scene suspected that Qin Yu had hidden his true strength. He must have deliberately shown his LV2 martial god realm strength to confuse his enemies. Otherwise, with his LV2 martial god realm cultivation level, it would be too shocking if he could easily kill 5 LV6 martial gods. Sister, did he hide his cultivation level? Chun Jiuxing, who was paying close attention to Qin Yu, turned his head to look at Chen Zillion beside him. He could not tell that Qin Yu had hidden his cultivation level. I can't tell. However, if he is not hiding his true cultivation level, he must have mastered some shocking secret technique. Chen Zillion's eyes flickered with a faint white light, but she did not discover anything. He killed the people of the Black Ice Martial Mansion just like that. I wonder who he is. Chun Jiuxing looked at Qin Yu, who occasionally appeared in the forest, with great interest. Every time Qin Yu appeared, there would be a genius who would either lose their combat strength or die. His qualification for the second round was decided by my grandfather. He must have a powerful background. Chun Zillion's red lips moved slightly. Could he be a disciple of a rogue cultivator? Chun Jiuxing guessed. Qin Yu had a divine body, but they had never heard of it before. Evidently, this should be because Qin Yu had not appeared in the world the entire time. Otherwise, even if he was not from the other martial realms, they would have heard of him. Moreover, it was impossible for an ordinary martial ancestor to make the decision personally. At the very least, in the ancient imperial martial world, only the martial kings of the top 5 royal palaces were qualified for his grandfather to meet them. Perhaps Chun Zillion was thinking about Qin Yu's intention to join the ancient imperial hall. Could it be that he was also preparing to participate in that plan? As time passed, the battle in the 100 Worlds picture grew more and more desperate. All sorts of battles were taking place, and the casualties of the Sky Prides continued to increase. Of the nearly 9,000 geniuses, more than 4,000 have been eliminated or died. The experts of the ancient imperial hall would only take action after the battle to drag out those who had lost their ability to fight. If they died in battle, they could only blame their bad luck. The martial progenitor realm elders of the ancient imperial palace would not lend a hand. The weak were not qualified to join the ancient imperial hall. Roar, roar, roar. In the ancient mountain range, the deafening roars of beasts resounded. Dozens of ferocious beasts with savage auras appeared from the depths of the ancient forest. Their bloodthirsty beast eyes were all staring at Chinyu in front of them. Chinyu flew up into the sky and stood side by side with the beasts that were as big as hills. His gaze was fixed on a giant golden python that was several hundred feet long. It was completely golden in color. There was a figure sitting cross-legged on the head of the golden python. It was a young man in a green robe. The young man's eyes were blood red. It looked like a blood-red gem was shining. I recognize you. You are the genius with the divine body. The young man in the green robe sat on the giant golden python's head and looked at Chinyu with a faint smile. He was surrounded by dozens of beasts. He did not take Chinyu, who was only at LV2 martial god realm, seriously. He is. Chinyu looked at that green-gowned youth. A strange expression appeared in his eyes. A demonic beast in human form? No, there's no demonic aura on him. The dragon soul sized up the young man in the green robe. Although the young man in the green robe disguised well, he was not a human. He must have been transformed by some kind of creature and had the ability to control beasts. The young man in the green robe was quite bold. He dared to transform into a human to participate in the ancient imperial palace test. However, he had passed the aptitude test and came to participate in the combat test. His ability to disguise himself was quite extraordinary. Even Qin, you only noticed the young man in the green robe after he sensed the beast's abnormality. Your aptitude is indeed amazing. However, after seeing this, you should know that aptitude is not everything. The young man in the green robe looked at Chinyu arrogantly. I will give you two options. Either you surrender to me, or you die. I am sorry. I don't want to choose either of the two options. Chinyu smiled. Before he finished his words, he had already dashed out of the void. Then die. The young man in the green robe's eyes were shining with a blood-red light. The dozens of beasts immediately pounced at Chinyu with great ferocity. Bang, 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 bang. Azure Dragon aura rose from Chinyu's body and his combat strength sword. He punched out continuously. Destructive fist radiance shot out, causing the void to shake. The beast that pounced at Su Mo exploded and turned into a bloody mist. In order to not expose his identity, Chinyu did not use the Azure Dragon battle with all his might. However, even if he were to only use the Azure Dragon battling the heavens, with Chinyu's battle power, it would still be difficult for him to find a match among the martial gods. How is this possible? The young man in the green robe, who had a hideous smile on his face, was shocked. How could a mere LV2 martial god possess such terrifying combat strength? Swoosh! While the young man in the green robe was in a daze, Chinyu had already arrived in front of him. He threw out a palm strike, and a mysterious seal appeared with a mysterious aura. Chinyu wanted to see what the young man in the green robe was. The young man in the green robe was about to retreat. The space-time power appeared, and the void suddenly became like a swamp. Roar! The seal pierced through the air and hit the young man in the green robe's head. A shocking beast roar came from the young man in the green robe. Then, the young man in the green robe exploded and revealed his true form. It was a two-headed beast that was light green in color. The two heads looked like a combination of a lion and a tiger, and they exuded an extraordinary aura. Is that the fierce barbarian heavenly tiger? A savage beast has sneaked into the ancient imperial palace's test. Could it be that the wildlands is going to be unstable again? Outside the 100 Worlds picture, the spectators and the experts from the ancient imperial palace were shocked. When they saw the fierce barbarian heavenly tiger with two heads, they were shocked. Swoosh! A beam of light appeared, and the fierce barbarian heavenly tiger was taken out of the 100 Worlds picture by the experts from the ancient imperial palace. After the fierce barbarian heavenly tiger was taken out of the picture, the other beasts regained their senses and immediately fled in all directions. Secret skill of the savage land. As the soul-devouring curse entered his palm, a secret skill appeared in Qin Yu's mind. This was a secret skill that he had obtained from the fierce barbarian Heavenly Tiger. Chapter 242. In the westernmost part of the ancient imperial martial world, there was a vast, desolate land. There were countless beasts living in the desolate land. It was similar to how the beasts could take human form. When the beasts cultivated to a certain level, they could also take human form. However, it was extremely difficult for the beasts to take human form. There were only a few beasts that could take human form in the martial god realm. When the beasts were at their peak, they had occupied 2/3 of the ancient imperial martial world. However, the ancient imperial palace had risen and unified the martial world. Only then did they drive the beasts to the westernmost part of the desolate land. Because of this, the beasts and the ancient imperial palace had always been at loggerheads. For thousands of years, the beasts had been challenging the ancient imperial palace's position. This time, the ferocious barbarian Heavenly Tiger had taken human form to sneak into the ancient imperial palace. Qin Yu did not intend to interfere with the grudge between the beasts and the ancient imperial palace. However, the secret art of the ancient imperial palace was very mysterious, and Qin Yu was interested in it. According to the ferocious barbarian Heavenly Tiger's memory, the secret art of the ancient imperial palace would allow one to control the beasts. It was similar to how the green-robed youth had controlled the beasts. Luckily, the half-step martial ancestor realm beast was not controlled by him. Otherwise, even Qin Yu would not have been able to capture it so easily. Suddenly, Qin Yu's expression slightly changed. His eyes shined. "What's wrong?" The dragon soul asked when it sensed Qin Yu's joy. "There's a sacred dragon vein in the desolate land." Qin Yu tossed the ferocious barbarian Heavenly Tiger's memory to the dragon soul. "A sacred dragon vein? Good things come in pairs." The dragon soul was overjoyed. The grade of the dragon vein was the same as the grade of the dragon tribe. The dragon chi in the sacred dragon vein was more than 10,000 times stronger than the dragon vein in the dragon spiritual city. Whoosh! As Qin Yu continued to search the ferocious barbarian Heavenly Tiger's memory, a ray of black light shot towards Qin Yu at an incredible speed. Judging from the momentum and speed of the attack, even a peak martial god would lose his life if he was struck. Qin Yu took a step in the air, evading the black light. His silhouette flickered as he appeared at the location of the attack. There were 4 figures there. They were the 4 geniuses who were participating in the assessment. From the looks of it, it was clear that they had joined forces. Rumble. Qin Yu did not hesitate at all. The azure dragon chi in his body surged, and he immediately charged out. After a series of earth-shaking explosions, the 4 young geniuses were immediately severely injured and killed. Towards those who want to kill him, Qin Yu has never been merciful. As time passed, the number of sky prides in the 100 Worlds portrait decreased. Of the 4,000 people, there were less than 2,000 left. In many independent spaces, geniuses had already stood out. Zhou Yunlang, Li Tianxian, and Zhao Yunhai, the 3 top prodigies, were naturally among them. 1 hour later, Qin Yu defeated all the geniuses and left the mountain range. At this time, most of the independent spaces had decided on their strongest contenders. There were only a dozen independent spaces where the battles were still taking place. Li Tianxian and Zhao Yunhai's eyes darkened when they saw Qin Yu. Since Qin Yu had successfully left the 100 Worlds portrait, he was now an official disciple of the ancient imperial palace. It would not be easy to eliminate him in the future. Dong! After another hour, the sound of a bell rang out, and the 100 Worlds picture immediately shrank. Those prodigies who were still in the 100 Worlds picture and had not yet won their battles were directly eliminated. In the end, only 800 geniuses had successfully entered the ancient imperial palace. These 800 geniuses had been selected from tens of thousands of semi-finalists. There was no doubt that they were the top geniuses in terms of their talents and strength. They had the potential to achieve the martial progenitor realm in the future. Congratulations, from today onward, you are all official disciples of the ancient imperial palace. The three purple-robed martial progenitors smiled at the 800 newcomers. These people would become the backbone of the ancient imperial palace in the future. Any of the 7 great martial realms. To be able to recruit so many geniuses meant that they would become a top force in the future. Of course, the fact that the ancient imperial palace could recruit 800 geniuses was another reason. The ancient imperial palace had a strong foundation. After all, cultivating a martial progenitor required a large amount of resources. If they did not have a strong foundation, it would be useless no matter how many geniuses they recruited. After a simple congratulation, the 3 purple-robed martial progenitors, he directly brought Qin Yu and the other 800-plus prodigies into the Sumeru realm and the ancient imperial palace. The ancient imperial palace was as big as an island. Even if one stood in the void, it would be difficult to see the end. The ancient imperial palace was divided into a few hundred areas. After Qin Yu and the other newcomers entered the ancient imperial palace, the first thing to do was to remember the division of the ancient imperial palace. Some of the restricted areas were forbidden for the newcomers. The aura of the heavenly lightning. Qin Yu, who was at the top of the palace, looked at the ancient imperial palace. He felt a strong fluctuation of the heavenly lightning. There was real connate lightning in the ancient imperial palace. After Qin Yu slightly looked into the distance, he immediately flew toward that direction. Soon, Qin Yu came to an ancient pool that was torn apart by lightning. The ancient pool was 100 feet wide, and the lightning energy in it was so dense that it almost turned into liquid. It was one of the cultivation realms in the ancient imperial palace. After taking a look, Qin Yu came to a realization. There was an ancient lightning stone sealed in the ancient pool. The lightning stone could automatically attract the heavenly lightning. Martial artists who had comprehended the Tao of lightning in the ancient imperial palace would have their strength increased by a few times. Apart from the lightning pool, there were more than 10 secret realms with different attributes that could assist one's cultivation. It was no wonder that countless geniuses wanted to enter the ancient imperial palace. After all, it was not easy to comprehend the ultimacy of heaven and earth after reaching the martial god realm. However, with the help of the elemental cultivation realms, the outcome would be different. This is a good chance. Qin Yu's eyes lit up. He had not had the chance to cultivate his fiery lightning dragon body after reaching the 8th transformation realm. Now, this pool of heavenly lightning was the best place to cultivate. After 2 more transformations, his fiery lightning dragon body would reach the great perfection realm. By then, Qin Yu would be able to cultivate the 3rd move of the 9 great battle dragon secret skills, the divine dragon body. When the fiery lightning dragon body reached the great perfection realm, he would have a strength of 100,000, which was comparable to an ordinary dragon's strength. However, even if the divine dragon body was just a beginner, he would be able to fight dragons in the sea and dragons in the sky. It was a supreme secret skill that could allow one to achieve the martial emperor realm with their physical body. Rumble. As Qin Yu charged into the lightning pool, the destructive lightning in the lightning pool surged toward Qin Yu like a cat that had smelled blood. It was so vast that it could be described as a tsunami. In an instant, Qin Yu's figure could no longer be seen. Someone has charged into the heavenly lightning pool. What is he trying to do? Is he attracting the heavenly lightning? Is this guy digging his own grave? The martial artists who were comprehending the Tao of lightning at the edge of the heavenly lightning pool were shocked. Daring to rush into the heavenly lightning pool like this. Was he really tired of living? Chapter 243. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Qin Yu, who was covered by the rolling lightning, did not show any signs of being destroyed by the lightning. Instead, the aura on his body became stronger. Those martial artists who were originally astonished gradually became confused and shocked. One should know that the ancient lightning stone had attracted the power of the innate lightning. Even an ordinary martial ancestor would not dare to take it head-on with his physical body. Qin Yu, who was only in the martial god realm, was able to withstand such a terrifying lightning attack. This was naturally shocking. He also did not know what sort of secret technique Qin Yu had trained in. Only with the strength of his physical body could he withstand such a powerful lightning attack. Qin Yu stayed in the sky lightning pool for an entire month. In this month, Qin Yu's divine body was not only famous in the ancient imperial martial world. Even the other 6 martial worlds had heard about it. Spies from many powers had entered the ancient emperor's mystic realm in succession. They wanted to obtain information about Qin Yu. Unfortunately, the entire ancient imperial martial world was under the control of the ancient imperial palace. Before those spies could get close to the ancient imperial city, they disappeared without a trace. The information that the outside world knew about Qin Yu, the possessor of the divine body, was pitifully little. Even the martial king forces in the ancient imperial martial world were confused about Qin Yu's background. Generally speaking, those who could participate in the semi-finals were the geniuses of the various forces in the ancient imperial martial world. However, no one knew about Qin Yu's background. The only thing that could be found was that Qin Yu's qualification for the semi-finals seemed to have been decided by the ancient emperor. While the various forces in the ancient imperial palace were thinking of ways to find out about Qin Yu's background. In the ancient imperial palace, because Qin Yu had been cultivating in the ancient lightning pool for an entire month, countless disciples and elders of the ancient imperial palace went to watch. They all wanted to know how long Qin Yu could last in the sky lightning pool. Qin Yu being in the limelight naturally made Li Tianxian and Zhao Junhai, who wanted to get rid of Qin Yu, unhappy. He wanted to get rid of Qin Yu more and more. 2 months had passed since then. That is Qin Yu, who is standing in the air above the heavenly lightning pool and surrounded by boundless heavenly lightning energy. His flesh and blood were undergoing tremendous changes. Qin Yu's flesh, blood, and bones were all covered by the fire and thunder dragon tattoos. If he could see through it, he would be able to discover it. At this moment, Qin Yu's entire body was filled with flames and lightning. The faint golden blood in Qin Yu's body was being tempered at this moment, and the golden color became even more intense. Fire lightning dragon body, perfection. After sensing that the power of fire and lightning in his body had reached a state of equilibrium, Xiao Qin's eyes lit up. Qin Yu opened his eyes, and in his pupils, there was a faint flicker of fire and lightning. The fire lightning dragon body had been cultivated to the 10th level. Qin Yu's blood was boiling, comparable to an ancient ferocious beast. Divine light could be vaguely seen flowing on his skin. Every drop of flesh and blood in his body contained shocking power like a volcano. Fire lightning dragon body, perfection. I'll take this opportunity to cultivate the dragon god tyrannical body. Qin Yu formed hand seals with his hands and focused his mind. The immemorial battle dragon art appeared in his mind. Waves of majestic dragon aura from the ancient dragon god seal immediately rushed into Qin Yu's body. In an instant, it spread all over his body. Chi Chi Chi, the fire and thunder dragon tattoos in Qin Yu's body glowed. Then, they merged with the dragon aura and completely seeped into the depths of his body, disappearing. When all the fire and thunder dragon tattoos in his body had merged with the dragon aura and seeped into his body, Qin Yu could clearly feel it. There seemed to be something in the depths of his body that was transforming, as if it was about to rush out. There was also a trace of mysterious divine power that was quietly spreading out. It merged with the battle dragon true origin in his dantian and the golden blood in his body. The fire and thunder dragon tattoos on Qin Yu's skin. Gradually, they were replaced by golden dragon tattoos. Boom! The divine power in his body overflowed for 3 days and 3 nights. When Qin Yu's skin was covered by the golden dragon tattoos, there was a faint dragon roar that shook the sky. In the next moment, an incomparably terrifying and vast power spread out. The majestic heavenly thunder power that had gathered around Qin Yu was directly dispersed, turning into countless lightning sparks that dissipated. It's over. There were still many Thunder Dao martial artists sitting cross-legged beside the heavenly thunder pool, cultivating. They all looked up at Qin. When Qin was gathering heavenly thunder, striking the body, their comprehension was greatly affected. If Qin did not have a rare divine body aptitude, they would have chased him away long ago. This pressure. However, when they saw Qin, the gazes of those martial artists were unable to refrain from narrowing. They sensed an intense, oppressive sensation from Qin body. Qin cultivation was clearly only at LV2 martial god realm. However, Qin made them feel even more pressured. It was as if a ferocious beast was walking towards them. The martial god realm disciples were still fine. However, the martial ancestor realm elders were extremely shocked and in disbelief. Qin did not pay attention to those disciples and elders whose gazes were filled with shock. He flew away. You're finally out. However, not long after Qin left the heavenly thunder pool, he was stopped by a group of people. The leader was Zhao Junhai, who had a gloomy face. What's the matter? Qin expression was calm. He completely ignored Zhao Junhai and the others who were obviously up to no good. Of course there's a matter. In a 100 Worlds picture, you killed 3 geniuses of my celestial martial mansion. How are you going to settle this debt? Zhao Junhai's eyes were cold like a poisonous snake. He had long wanted to kill Qin. The death of the 3 geniuses in the 100 Worlds picture made his killing intent even stronger. That's it. Qin looked at Zhao Junhai indifferently. What? Do you think it's a small matter to kill the people of my celestial martial mansion? Zhao Junhai's eyes became even more gloomy and murderous. The other geniuses of the celestial martial mansion were also filled with killing intent. Cleaning up a few small fries shouldn't be a big deal. Qin smiled faintly. You're courting death. Zhao Junhai was furious. He could not hide his killing intent as he struck out with his palm. The dazzling golden light condensed into a 10-foot tall giant monument. It carried a terrifying pressure as it slammed towards Qin. Qin did not dodge at all. He fiercely threw out a punch. The terrifying force was like a flood of ferocious beasts. Dang, dang, dang. Zhao Junhai's face changed drastically. It was as if he'd been hit by a desolate giant beast. He was directly blasted back dozens of feet before he could stabilize himself. What kind of force was that? Feeling his numb right hand, Zhao Junhai looked at Qin with unconcealable astonishment in his eyes. He, who was a peak martial god, was actually knocked back by Qin with a single punch? Although he did not use his full strength, he did not go easy on Qin either. Qin, who was only a second-level martial god, not only blocked his attack, he even knocked him back. This greatly exceeded Zhao Junhai's expectations. Qin clenched his fists and a smile appeared on his face. Zhao Junhai did not go easy on Qin, but he was not serious. It was just a simple punch. Qin's current physical strength was terrifying enough to fight against a martial progenitor after he had mastered the basic level of the divine dragon body. His physical defense was even stronger than a sacred weapon. Qin's battle power could be said to have made an enormous leap. Chapter 244. This guy attacked. Zhao Junhai's followers were startled before they immediately reacted and charged toward Qin. Streaks of terrifying Upanishads of heaven and earth turned into destructive attacks that swept across the sky with shocking power. I'll kill you. Zhao Junhai, who was sent flying over Tianzhong, wore a hideous expression. His body emitted a brilliant golden glow as a terrifying, murderous intent locked on a Qin figure. How bold! Qin eyes flickered coldly. He was filled with murderous intent after Zhao Junhai kept provoking him. Whoosh! Whoosh! At that instant, 2 figures descended from the sky at lightning speed. A lush green light appeared along with it, exuding exuberant vitality. It was the ultimates of the heavens and earth that Zhao Junhai and his crew had executed. As soon as they came into contact with the green glow, they were immediately shattered. Chen Jiuxing, Chen Zilian, Zhao Junhai, whose killing intent was surging, narrowed his eyes when he saw the two people. They were none other than the descendants of the martial dominator realm, Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian. As expected, of the most outstanding talents among the younger generation of the ancient imperial palace. Their cultivations had reached the half-martial progenitor realm, and their talents were even stronger than Li Tianxuan's. Disciples of the same sect are forbidden from fighting each other. Don't you know the rules? Chen Jiuxing wore an imperious expression as he glared at Zhao Junhai and the people of the heavens in Martial Emperor Palace. Please don't misunderstand. We're just having a friendly duel with junior brother Shinfeng. Zhao Junhai's hideous expression immediately vanished. The murderous intent in his eyes disappeared as a smile appeared on his face. Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian's identities were even more honorable than the elders of the martial progenitor realm. Even without their identities, he was no match against Chen Jiuxing and Chen Zilian in terms of strength. Since you're here, I've got something to tell you. There are signs of a riot in the desolate land. Thus, the elders have decided to send us there for training. Chen Jiuxing glanced at Zhao Junhai, but did not pursue the matter further. It was not the right time for the ancient imperial palace to fall out with the top martial emperor palaces. Desolate land? Qin Yu's eyes flickered. The dragon spirit became excited. They had planned to head to the wildlands after completing their body tempering. Who would have thought that the opportunity would present itself? A rebellion in the wildlands? When are we leaving? It was common for savage beasts to attack the ancient imperial martial world. Zhao Junhai and the others were not surprised. However, he did not know about the savage beast's rampage this time. Did it have anything to do with the ferocious barbarian heavenly tiger that tried to sneak into the ancient imperial palace? It should be in the next 2 days, Chen Jiuxing said. If that's the case, then I'll take my leave first. Zhao Junhai cupped his fists and left with his entourage. However, after they left, the smile on Zhao Junhai's face gradually turned sinister. The rebellion in the wildlands was the perfect opportunity. Junior brother Shinfeng, Zhao Junhai, seems to want to kill you. Just in case, why don't you come with us on this trip to the wildlands? After Zhao Junhai left, Chen Jiuxing said to Qin Yu. In the past 2 months, they hadn't been able to find out Qin Yu's background. However, they knew that Qin Yu wasn't from the 5 great imperial mansions. Chen Jiuxing's attitude toward Qin Yu was as indifferent as his attitude towards Zhao Junhai. Thank you for your kind intentions. However, since I'm going to train, I won't be under anyone's protection. Qin Yu tactfully declined Chen Jiuxing's proposal. He then turned around and left. He knows that Zhao Junhai has his eyes on him, but he still wants to go alone. He's quite bold. Chen Jiuxing muttered softly as he looked at Qin Yu, who was quickly disappearing. Given the strength that he displayed, I don't think Zhao Junhai can defeat him. Chen Zilian's bright eyes were fixed on Qin Yu as he left. White light flickered in her eyes. She was certain that Qin Yu's cultivation was only at LV2 martial god realm. In other words, Qin Yu didn't hide his cultivation. I wonder what kind of secret skill he has cultivated. Chen Jiuxing nodded slightly. They had seen the conflict between Qin Yu and Zhao Junhai and could deduce Qin Yu's strength. Although he was only at LV2 martial god realm, his combat strength was no weaker than a peak martial god realm expert. He was able to defeat an enemy of a higher level. Even Chen Jiuxing, who was the descendant of the ancient emperor, was surprised. In the new disciple area of the ancient imperial palace. After returning to the palace, Qin Yu set up restrictions and entered the ancient dragon seal space. The ancient dragon soul's origin power, the space-time power, was unleashed. However, Qin Yu didn't cultivate when he entered the ancient dragon seal space. Instead, he took out the spiritual array disc. Although his disguise was sealed by his first senior brother, no one would be able to see through his disguise. However, the 10,000 Ghost Palace and the Heavenly Demon Sect weren't ordinary forces. In order to prevent them from tracking him, Qin Yu had to be prepared to deal with the crisis. Moreover, the situation in the ancient imperial palace was more turbulent than he had imagined. Once the ancient emperor passed away, the top imperial palaces in the ancient imperial martial world would definitely attack. Before obtaining the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon, Qin Yu had to stay in the ancient imperial palace no matter what happened. 2 days in the outside world were 10 days in the ancient dragon seal space. In 10 days' time, Qin Yu increased the grade of the spiritual array disc to sacred artifact. He also engraved several ancient killing formations and sealed them in the spiritual array disc. Qin Yu's cultivation had also broken through to the third layer martial god realm as a matter of course. The 5 essences of heaven and earth had all increased by 3 levels. 2 days later, Qin Yu was summoned by the elders to the square of the ancient imperial palace. The ancient imperial palace had sent out 10 purple-robed martial ancestors and 20 white-robed martial ancestors for the Wildlands riot. There were more than 4,000 martial god realm disciples in front of the 30 martial ancestor realm elders. Almost no forces in the 7 great martial worlds could compare to the cultivation environment of the martial god realm. However, the competition between the disciples of the ancient imperial hall could be counted on one's fingers in the 7 great martial worlds. This time, the ancient imperial palace would give out rewards based on the strength and number of beasts killed by the disciples. The better the results, the better the rewards. Among the 4,000 disciples, other than the old disciples, Qin Yu and the others were all new disciples. Qin Yu, Zhou Yunlang, Li Tianxian, Zhao Junhai, and more than 800 new disciples had all moved out. Let's go. A purple-robed martial ancestor realm elder activated the huge teleportation formation. The thousands of people in the square immediately disappeared. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The space trembled slightly. Qin Yu and the others appeared in an ancient city a few 100,000 miles away from the ancient imperial city. Around the ancient city was a barren plain that stretched as far as the eye could see. Huge ancient cities could be seen in various parts of the plain. Spiritual runes glowed on every ancient city, and runes filled the air. These ancient cities were actually huge formation eyes, with the city as the formation eyes and the heavens and earth as the formation. They had set up a huge formation. Such a technique was indeed quite extraordinary. This barren plain was the barrier that blocked the wildlands. It was also the place where the ancient imperial palace and the wildlands beasts fought all year round. Ever since the rise of the ancient imperial palace, the wildlands beasts had never broken through this plain. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.